Welcome for today's meeting and the importance of this gathering. I will lay out to you all just now. Like I was saying a while ago, my name is Kenneth Cuvalay, and I will be hosting this day with you all. And together with my co-host would be Cindy Peters, who will be selecting all the specific questions which will be coming in and putting them in an effective manner to our panel members. Um, what I would like to stress on today, the importance of this gathering is to actually bring the English part and other parts of the Caribbean closer to the Dutch Caribbean. Since we started up with this development process, and I would like to say we have to commend Caribbean Progressive Prospect as a platform for this. This is the platform which is giving us this voice today. And based on their initiative as well, we were able to bring this day together. And this day, the importance of it is, like I was going to say a while ago, is to bring closer to each other the Dutch part of the Caribbean to the English part of the Caribbean, the French part of the Caribbean, the Spanish part, as we continue to develop this process. We've been actually having going back and forth on the platform of Caribbean Perspective now for a number of months. I'm there, I think, with this group since the beginning of April. And there's a lot was we are discussing, there's a lot that's taking place. And one of the things which we noticed during the platform meeting is that we have a broad segment of the Caribbean, which is English speaking, French speaking, which hardly know anything other than sometimes the names of the Dutch part of the Caribbean. And for the purpose of that, we decide we need to actually create a moment in order to give better insight and understanding and bringing the islands together with the rest of the Caribbean, because there is a lot which is taking place right now in the Caribbean, um, all part of the Caribbean, in particularly the Dutch part of the Caribbean, and especially since the coming of COVID-19 and the horrible hurricane Irma, which passed through the Caribbean and St. Martin and other islands of the Dutch territories. Um, there's a lot of interference and there's a lot of um, domination, so to speak, by the Dutch in interference in the Dutch region for that matter. And for that matter, at the same time, we thought and believe it's important to shed better light to our brothers and sisters throughout the rest of the Caribbean, what is happening into the Dutch Caribbean. I will ask everybody at this point in time, after I introduce the panel members, the speakers today, that the speakers will have 10 minutes to present themselves and who they are and what they're about in relation to their introduction at the same time. So when the speakers start speaking and introducing themselves separately, as I will call their name, if there's question, I would ask everybody, including the audience, to just note the questions and hold on to the questions for a while until we reach to the point where we will have the part which we will call questions and answer. So I'll appreciate if the audience can wait until that point in time. Um, at the same time, today I would like to actually commend the speakers who volunteer and to be here with us today to give their perspective in relation to the number of questions which we have considering what is going on in the Dutch part of the Caribbean. So I applaud them as they are here today with us, and I will start calling their names now, and we will have today proceeding is composed of 6 panel members, which is Dr. Arundel, Rhoda Arundel from St. Martin. Dr. Arundel is a assistant professor, University of the Bahamas, and also linguistic, and also an author and founder of Soil um, of Inspirational Learning, St. Martin. We also have from Curacao, Mr. Ringo Harrigan, who is founder and director Save Our Youth Foundation. Then we have James Finies from Bonaire, who's a human rights activist, president of Foundation Noske Bonaire Back, which means to say we want back Bonaire, Bonaire. I think when I finish with a short description of what's happened after the Dutch Antilles ceased to exist, and there was a transition which took place in October 2010. I think one will understand better why the name we want Bonaire back and where it's coming from. Also, since Sister Cindy, Mr. Van Putten still didn't appear. He's not in as yet.
Not as yet.
Okay, because
I see Sharon Van Putten. I don't know if that's
right. That's his
okay.
wife.
So she's in the chat room.
Okay, well, bring her into the meeting then, because she's coming. Her name is.
No, I mean she's in the meeting, but their camera
okay.
is off and their mic. So I'm sending him a message again.
Okay, good. Then we have Mr. Clyde Van Putten, former Commissioner of St. Eustatius and former leader of the Progressive Labour Party of St. Eustatius. And then we have Dr. Atwell Kane from Aruba, project leader and researcher, and also the Foundation of Cultural Knowledge and Identity, Aruba. He also has a master in cultural anthropology. And we have our distinguished guest as well, Dr. Coben, Clyde Coben, who has been many times on the rock, as we call it, St. Eustatius. Dr. Clyde Coben is international advisor on governance and multilateral diplomacy, decolonization specialist in Clyde. So I welcome all of the panel members. And from this point on, I will give the first panel members he or she have 10 minutes to make their point. And for logistic reason, hold on, sorry. Before I do that, let me give you a short description of the Dutch region of the Antilles. We know that the Dutch has been occupying these islands from the 17th century on. In 1954, the country, the Netherlands Antilles, came into being consistently of the 6 islands, mentioned islands. Together with Suriname and the Netherlands, they formed the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Suriname became an independent country in 1975. Aruba has what you call a status apartheid since 1986. The Charter of the Kingdom of the Netherlands is the legal instrument that set out the political relationship between the Netherlands and the Netherlands Antilles at the time. Constitutional transition took place on October the 10th, to 2010. And therefore, we have now 3 so-called islands in the kingdom, which actually make up with the other 3 islands, which is St. Eustatius, Saba, and Bonaire, which became, since that transition, public entity. In 2010, after several years of consultation, each island held a referendum to determine its relationship with the Netherlands. Curacao, St. Martin became autonomous. A strange word, autonomous in itself, because as I understand the terminology and the meaning of it, autonomous means to say that you have self-governs and you are independently supposed to be governing yourself to a degree. You're not an independent sovereign state like Suriname or anything like that, but you have your own parliament and you have your own cabinet and ministers as such. What is happening to that word autonomous is a bit ironic, because on acts, the Dutch are constantly intervening and deciding what is happening in those three islands or countries, like they choose to call them anyhow. So it's a bit ironic to say they are independent countries within the Netherlands, whereof they have actually very little say unless the Dutch approve of everything which they determine should be justifiable. So it's a bit ironic terminology. So the Saint Martin, like I said, and Curacao became autonomous countries, and Aruba kept its status apartis, which it has already had since in 1986. And the smaller three islands, Bonaire, Saint Eustatius, and Saba, like I said, became public entity under the Dutch government. Although the people of Saint Eustatius, I think this is very important to note, in a referendum, overwhelmingly voted to stay in the construction of the former Dutch Antilles, which behind their back in Den Haag, their leaders, without asking the people of Saint Eustatius, decide to put them into the situation of a public entity. So Saint Eustatius and population of Saint Eustatius have to been dealing with that bitter pill from since that time, because they didn't ask to be in this situation. And by the way, since the transition, most of the people in these entities are being treated more or less as second and third class citizens. So could you imagine, aside the fact that you vote in a referendum to be not in this situation and you were put unwillingly in this situation, what does that constitute to people at this point in time? Along with that, their local government was in 2018 pushed aside and abandoned, and up until today, the people of Saint Eustatius have no democratical freedom of choosing their own island government anymore. Although the people of Saint Eustatius, like I went on to read, wanted to stay within the country of the Netherlands Antilles, that country ceased to exist because of the outcome of the referendum on the other islands. I call it the colonial situation. The previous mentioned status mentioned equality and independence for all islands, but the reality is that the Dutch government in the past 30 years increasingly dictating its policy for the islands, making autonomy an illusion as such. As of 1990, this was in the areas of political administration integrity, sound budgeting, law enforcement. Recently, with post-EMA and COVID-19, relief funds are only available in the islands reform integrity chamber. Pay cuts in civil servants, salaries, pension reforms, and that of the Netherlands itself can determine where the funds can be allocated on the islands. I must point out, I think it's something like 558 million euros were allocated or earmarked after the aftermath of Irma to assist the people and the whole country of the Dutch part of Saint Martin, and those funding were allocated, I think, up until today in the World Bank structure. And in the acute phase of actually the aftermath of Irma, up until today, those funding which was allocated to help those people in the acute aftermath of Irma did not reach those people. And up until today, people are still lingering with the horrible aftermath of Irma as such. So this is another indication. Sorry, April again is calling. Brother Atwell. Brother Atwell.
Yes, sorry. Go. I don't want to let me in because I'm just getting connecting, and nothing is happening.
Nothing is happening?
Just connecting.
What you should do is, what you should do is then log off and then use the link and come back in the hole. Okay?
Okay,
You're in?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Problem solved then. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, sorry for that interruption. He is in now. Cindy, you, I think you're seeing him in now?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Okay, and finally, since 2010, the situation for Bonaire, Sabre, St. Eustatius has changed dramatically as well since they became public entities. Many people complain that they are treated as second-class citizens. Dutch influence and pressures on the islands are increasing over the last years with the takeover of the government of St. Eustatius in February 2018 as all-time low. With the central Dutch government located in Bonaire, the composition of the population on Bonaire is changing with many white Dutch European settlers on the island. That's to give you a short synopsis or insight of how the Dutch islands are actually right now situated and continue to grow into a dramatical social and political and cultural situation since after the transition in 2000, October the 10th, 2010. I would like to chronologically state that I would like the proceeding to start today with the speakers coming from the three islands first, and based on their 10 minutes with their introduction and plight for themselves, the other three speakers, that is including Dr. Arundel, Dr. Corbin, and Dr. Atwell will then follow with their introduction. Why am I doing this? Is because I think it's important that Bonaire, St. Eustatius, and Curacao, the representative of those three islands, give their introduction so that the audience at broad and also the rest of the panel member can have a better insight as to where they are coming from and where the questions are actually cutting into their plight at the same time. So I would like to welcome Brother Ringo Harrigan to start with his introduction. It is right now 2020, so you have until 2030 to make your case, Brother Ringo, and I will give you a warning by when you have the last 2 minutes, okay? So the floor is yours for right now. Thank you.
Please unmute the mic.
Yeah. You need to unmute him, Cindy. Okay, I'll unmute him.
Okay.
Brother Ringo, go ahead.
Okay, again. Thank you, Brother Kenneth. Greetings to all. My name is Harrigan. I'm from Curacao, founder and director of Safe Our Youth Curacao Foundation. My organization, we stand for the rights and development of people with disability here in Curacao. And we do different projects. I'm a member of the steering committee of Caribbean Progressive Perspective. And we're about to talk about a bit about the situation here in Curacao, about the Dutch atrocities here in Curacao. Let me start that since 1634 till 1792, West Indies Company, it is a company that the Dutch people had, yeah, was handling everything here in the Caribbean, yes, with the slavery atrocities, etc. And after that, it becomes in 1795, they had the Republic of the United Netherlands with South Republic, and 1806, Kingdom of Holland, in 1865, government regulations. Yeah, that is how the steps went during the period, and that in 1955, the Netherlands, they handled with United Nations for the Statute of Curacao, and where the Netherlands, they fooled United Nations, he tricked them. So thank you for India, and Nicaragua, who didn't trust the Netherlands on the negotiation, and they said they're gonna put a note that if something happened during the periods in the future with the islands, between the islands and the Netherlands, the islands can come back. And that is the Article 73, where the islands can come back. So that is one good thing for the islands. The Dutch atrocities are forcing the recolonizing of Curacao and putting the local people in a deplorable life situation for a lower rank of civilians here in Curacao. The Dutch has a book and a documentary entitled Curacao, where they are saying openly that people from Curacao must be happy that Dutch did take them from Africa and dress them because they were walking naked in Africa, and that the Curacaoan people must be happy and confirm with what they did for the Curacaoan people, and they must be happy for their lives. And that is something that it is very sad to hear the language of these Dutch people here in Curacao and the atrocity that they're doing and destroying everything here in Curacao. The people of Curacao is under a high tension and pressure because they don't want to be recolonized again. We can see also in the period of coronavirus that it's not the government of Curacao is ruling, it is the Dutch is ruling here, where KLM booking and sending the people here. And right now it's the same. And the government of Curacao is just a puppet. They just have to do what the colonizers are saying. If you look at the years of the development of the youth here in Curacao since 1930 coming up, they've taken the students to study in the Netherlands with a strategy to keep them there, and so that Curacao have a brain drain here, that you don't have your people to have the island to develop. Also, what we have is during the collision of George Floyd, in the Netherlands, we already have brother Harrigan, who they passed away the same way. After the issue of George Floyd in Amsterdam, there was a big riot there where the Dutch government wasn't happy because the world would know about the racism and discrimination in the Netherlands, and what the government did is to pass a law saying that if something happened, you cannot pursue the police who was involved in the case. So right now, with the Caribbean reform identity that the Netherlands is pushing to pass here in Curacao, we're gonna go back in 1600s, that they can kill people and nothing's gonna happen. And the other thing is that to see that the government of Curacao has nothing to say, that it is the Dutch government is handling everything here in Curacao. We can see that the governor represents the king, and the governor is the one advisor board here in Curacao, and also the head of the government and the head of the parliament, and the governor is the one who swear in the new judges. So that is everything is the Dutch government is ruling here. For example, all the laws that has to be passed in parliament, the governor has to pass through these laws, check them everything, and send them to the Netherlands, and then come back, and then what they don't like, you can pass the law. So that is part of the situation here in Curacao, that if the Dutch people are ruling, they are making the life of the people of Curacao very difficult, and that they cannot develop here in Curacao. And also the companies that the government of Curacao had, everything was breakdown. For example, we have the airline ALM, DCA.
Yeah, brother Harrigan,
Yeah.
you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, let me wrap up then. Okay. So I have to say that the Dutch is destroying the most precious thing in Curacao, and that is our families. And that is since 1600 they've been doing that, and they're still doing that. The precious thing that we have in Curacao, breaking the family. Let me finish with that, and then we go further in the other sets. Thank you, Brother Kenneth.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you for your introduction. Pertaining to your introduction, I think it's important, specific questions which you will have in relation to anything which correlate to your introduction, you can note them, so you can put those questions specifically to Dr. Corbin and Dr. Atwell and Dr. Arundel, okay? So I will suggest you look at your introduction and see what kind of specific question you need to put to your other 3 members of the panel. At this point in time, I would like to invite Brother James Finies from Bonaire to come in and make his introduction. You have exactly 10 minutes as well, Mr. Finies. Are you hearing me? I just unmute him, Cindy. Are you hearing me, Brother Finies?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. You have exactly 10 minutes to do your introduction on behalf of Bonaire.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the Bonairean peoples, we thank the Caribbean Progressive Perspective Group movement and extend special greetings to our brother Ringo, Brother Clyde, I see him, Dr. Arundel, Dr. King, and Dr. Corbin, and all other brothers and sisters of the Caribbean, Latin American, and the world participating today. Many thanks for the opportunity to be part of this important discussion on our struggle for self-determination in the Dutch Caribbean. For us, it's an honor to be part of this movement in history, moving forward towards discussing the unfinished decolonization process of the Caribbean peoples. I'm a native of Bonaire, a former commercial banker, founder of and past president of the NGO platform from Bonaire, and turned activist. I would like to inform and correct some misinformation and non-information on how Bonaire came where it is today. The people of Bonaire never choose to become a public entity or to be integrated in Holland. The referendum of 2004, the break of the Netherlands Antilles and Bonaire, the people choose for a direct link with Holland that would give direct access to development funds from Holland to Bonaire and deal with the poverty backlog instead of going through the Netherlands Antilles Curacao administration. It was a sui generis choice to be filled in by negotiating with Holland and then to be decided by the people of Bonaire. Curaçao and St. Martin choose for autonomy. Status like Aruba, Statia choose to remain into the Antilles. None of these islands got what they voted for. Only Saba seems to be happy to get what they voted for so far in the Antilles. However, the Bonaire referendum that was scheduled to be held before 10/10/10, the dissolution of the Netherlands Antilles, the referendum law made by the democratic representation of the people of Bonaire, the island council was destroyed by the Bonaire governor. Today, a Netherlands Antilles governor goed gedrag. The Bonaire people could not decide themselves whether if they agree or not with the negotiation result of the future state structure of Bonaire. So the status was imposed on the as public entity on us on October 10, 2010. I myself took a stand that the Bonairean people has to decide themselves and protested for 8 months non-stop, day and night, 24/7 at the government office for a referendum. We said we will not leave and stop until we get a referendum. The government was forced to give the people of Bonaire a referendum. This referendum took place on 18th of December 2015. The question was, do you agree with the interpretation given the direct relationship with the Netherlands? Yes or no? Almost 70% of the Bonaire people came out and voted about 66% voted no, rejected this current entity status as one of the more convincing referendum results in the Netherlands Antilles so far. To resume, Bonaire never chose for public entity or integration in Holland, but instead rejected it and are up to date being governed in a status of not of our choosing. In October 2017, the Dutch parliament completed the illegal annexation and embedded Bonaire together with Statia and Saba for eternity in the Dutch constitution under unequal rights, creating by Dutch law second-class citizens in the Caribbean and such institutionalized apartheid again, and this time not in South Africa but in the Caribbean, because Holland does not respect the people's voice and decision of our 2015 referendum. As we have been undemocratically annexed and integrated in Holland, the people of Bonaire support us, our organization, Noske Bonaire Back, We Want Bonaire Back, in our efforts to fight for the right of self-determination and donated over $50,000 by $1, $2 fundraisers. We have been busy fighting so to help us, and we embark on the mission towards the international community and the United Nations. We are seeking to re-enlist Bonaire back on the list of non-self-governing territories of the United Nations and fall back under the protection and guidance of the Special Committee on Decolonization according to the Chapter 11 Declaration regarding non-self-governing territories as per Article 73. With this, we highlight the benefits to be on that list. The United Nations Special Committee keeps the political, economic, and social situation in the non-self-governing territory under review and monitoring of all activities that will lead to self-government in Bonaire. This in accordance with the wishes of the people of Bonaire. United Nations Special Committee functioning as a neutral third party between Bonaire and the Netherlands on the issues of self-determination and self-government will provide information and territorial developments and facilitates territory-specific decolonization processes, offers advices and options. These are case-by-case basis. The Netherlands being required to report annually to the United Nations as they stopped reporting in 1954. They have to report back on the manner in which it is assisting the people of Bonaire in promoting social, economic, political, and educational progress and developing appropriate forms toward attaining our self-government. The United Nations support in helping the people of Bonaire to strengthen the resources that are required for self-government, conducts annual regional seminars for face-to-face discussions with territorial and civil society representatives, as well as experts, and will dispatch fact finders and advisory missions to the territories. We will get direct support, assistance, and membership from the Department of Political Affairs Decolonization Unit, the Department of Public Information, the Economic Commission of Latin America and Caribbean, the ECLAC, the Office of the High Representatives of Small Development States, United Nations Children Fund, the UNICEF, the UNDP, the United Nations Environmental Program, the United Nations Population Fund, the UNESCO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, the World Health Organization, and the ILO. So, to understand, the listing will, on the non-self-governing territories, will not and never be carried out by Holland, the colonizer. Bonaire at the moment is following the steps, the same process of the successful relisting of the French Polynesia Islands in 2013 on the guidance of the Dependency Studies Project. To finalize, we are here in Bonaire under duress and are fighting for survival as we are being systematically eradicated. That is a fact, a statistical fact. The Caribbean need to know this. The world need to know this. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this with you today and take it further because we need your help. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brother Finies, for that detailed introduction from the side of you and the people in Bonaire. You have another minute at least, so you were right on the dot with the time. So commend you on that as well. So again, thank you for the introduction. Last speaker from the third island, which is St. Eustatius, I would like to invite to give his 10 minutes introduction and his plight regarding the people of St. Eustatius is Mr. Clyde van Putten. Mr. Clyde van Putten, are you hearing me? Let me unmute you then. You hearing me, Mr. van Putten?
Yes, good afternoon.
Welcome. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon to all and sundries, and particularly to those that are part of the panel. First of all, on behalf of the community of St. Eustatius, we want to salute and congratulate those who have taken the initiative, Mr. Cuvalay and others, to be able to assemble this august body where we can basically discuss the atrocities that was committed by the Netherlands over several decades as a result of their failure to comply with what they themselves have signed back in 1952-53. I had the distinct pleasure of serving as a member of the Netherlands Antilles Parliament during its existence. And I can remember my parting speech as a member of that august body. I warned my colleagues at the time that we would be making a colossal mistake if we were to destroy or dismantle the Netherlands Antilles. And while I did not have all the information back then, because since that time a number of research was done, and it became obvious that even the very 1954 statute that so many of the islands like to use as the Bible, even that in itself was in conflict with international laws and international regulation based on what the founding fathers, of which the Dutch was a part of the United Nations. And so as a result of this very unfortunate situation, the islands of the former Netherlands Antilles now finds themselves in a predicament, in an entanglement, where the Dutch, instead of complying with the full decolonization process of these islands, as they indicated back then, they are doing everything to recolonize the islands. Since 2010, after the dissolution of the Netherlands Antilles, St. Eustatius, as they put it, has been a special municipality of the Netherlands. Yet this legal status is in contravention of international law, which stipulate that regardless of the affiliation with the metropole, it should always result in a full measure of self-government, as stipulated in Article 73 of the United Nations Charter. A clear example of the violation is that St. Eustatius cannot fully collect its own taxes, revenues, cannot set its own budget without the approval of the Hague, and cannot make decisions about its own personnel, even when the Executive Council, which was fully put in place by the elected Island Council, which directly elects the representatives of the Island Council, whatever decision is made by the Executive Council, it is subject to the approval of a colonial appointed ruler on the island of Bonaire. And if that person perceives that he or she is not in favor with that particular decision that was taken by the lawfully elected and appointed government of the island, that person could decide to go against the decision. In addition, the government has been frustrated by the countless ongoing decisions that are being taken in The Hague, and those who claim to say they are acting on behalf of St. Eustatius. And this certainly is in violation of the full measure of self-government under Article 73 of the United Nations. Under Article 73 of the UN Charter, the government of the Netherlands is obligated to recognize that the principle that the interests of the inhabitants of those self-known governing territories are paramount. In addition, it must assist St. Eustatius to develop a self-government, to take due account of the political aspirations of the people of this island, and to assist them in the progressive development of the free political institution. General Assembly Resolution 954X extend the reporting requirements of the government of the Netherlands under Article 73 in relation to the Netherlands Antilles. But the status of St. Eustatius maternally changed when its people wishes in a popular referendum to remain part of the Netherlands Antilles were denied, and against the will of the people and in non-compliance of the full measure of self-government, St. Eustatius was placed in the so-called public entity, which we on several occasions have challenged. Since then, St. Eustatius has not been provided the full measure of self-government as required by the General Assembly in its resolution of 742. In resolution 111/17ER, adopted on May 8, 2017, the Island Council of St. Eustatius reaffirmed its profound objections to how the government is being treated in violation of the obligations of the government of the Netherlands under international law, and invoke its right to the full measure of self-government. As you would recall then, a motion was presented in the Island Council at that point in time, at which point in time we stated that we were of the view that the Dutch government had the right to complete the decolonization process, and because of the illegal status and the illegal laws at the time that was hindering the elected and appointed government from carrying out its work, we went to the Island Council and we stated in no uncertain term by the means of this motion that we would put aside any law that was in violation of the international laws and any law that will basically hinder the people of St. Eustatius from being able to effectuate that full measure of self-government. The state's surprise decisions of February 17, 2018, without any form of consultation with the elected Island Council of St. Eustatius and the people of the island, decided to violate the Article 73 of the United Nations, and basically they formed a coup d'etat and they take over the government of the island. This we considered a flagrant disregard for the laws of the United Nations that the Dutch government themselves signed back in 1952-53. And as a result of that, we started legal proceedings against the Dutch government, which is ongoing. It's good to note here that at the time we call upon the countries of Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin to come to the rescue of the island, rescue in the sense to let their voice be heard, to take a firm position in this regard. Unfortunately, it was only after a period of time that the Parliament of Curacao adopted a motion where they basically condemned the decision taken at the time by the federal government. But beside that, absolutely nothing was done. What was also alarming is that the federal government in the Netherlands
sorry to interrupt you. You have an additional 2 minutes, please.
Yes, the federal government in the A used a bogus report that was commissioned by them and basically was carried out by a former government, a governor of Aruba, Mr. Ringo, and a former member of the Dutch Parliament. And I must say that based on this report, they sort of substantiate the unfounded charges, which I don't really want to go into at this point in time because I think it is pretty much known. But what I must say here is that unlike many of the other islands, Statia was the only island who stated in no uncertain term that if we were the last island to remain in the Netherlands Antilles, that would have been the case. And I must say, against the wishes of the people of St. Eustatius, we were forced in to this status that we have. There was an evaluation after 5 years, which took place in 2014. And here again, the people of St. Eustatius rejected the status that we have at this point in time because it is not working for us. The Island Council in 2015 ratified the outcome of that referendum. We also warned the Netherlands against having us anchored in the Dutch Constitution without any form of consultation with the people. And today that is the case. We are anchored into the Dutch Constitution, something that our people did not ascribe and did not agree to. I want to say very clearly here that my party and I continue to remain resolute because we believe that the Dutch government have an obligation to complete the decolonization process. But when I look at the developments that is taking place at this point in time, particularly in Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin, in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, it is clear for me that even the resolution of the United Nations, which indicates that by 2020, that all colonies should get, all colonial powers should get rid of their colonies. What we are seeing at this point in time, that the Dutch is using a pandemic situation to enforce their will and recolonize the island. And so we are resolute in our efforts to ensure that we work side by side. As a matter of fact, in the past, as the former leader of the Progressive Labour Party, I have called on other political leaders in the former islands of the Netherlands Antilles to join forces where we can confront the Dutch and, reach out to the international community. And I should also say here, I believe that the international community have failed, CARICOM has failed, and other such organizations in their effort to ensure that the democracy prevail in these islands.
Okay, Brother Putten, thank you for that stunning introduction, and thank you very much again. Before I go to the fourth panel member, I would like to ask those of the public who are listening in to today's proceeding to place their question in the chat as much as possible, because we do want to encourage and continue to invite the broader public to participate in these discussions, because without the broader public, we cannot meet our goals as such neither. So we are continually addressing and trying to stimulate and motivate the participation as much as possible of the broader community. So please place your questions or comment in the chat, please. Dr. Cuvalay Coben, like you've been to St. Eustatius on many occasions, I think some of these topics are not really new to you. What is new to you, I think, is the additional developing situation, which has been becoming more gravely and stunning, how the Dutch is in a manipulative and using their what I call global capitalism to dominate and to actually get their way, especially if you look at what is happening in Curacao and St. Martin and Aruba, in the face of not only one tragic moment, which is one is COVID-19, and particularly to St. Martin and to other parts of the Dutch Caribbean, the aftermath of Irma. And if you look at the liquidity plan and the way the Dutch are imposing impossible, extreme impossible conditions to actually granting financial aid to that part of the Dutch Caribbean, which actually make up the Dutch kingdom in the whole. And if you look at how within the situation of COVID-19, how the Dutch is treating their European white citizens as such. I would like to pose the other question to you as follows. Do you believe that that there's a question of infringement of human rights and deprivation of the rights to self-determination by dissolving of the democratically elected island government of St. Eustatius and the influences and dominant power which the Dutch government execute on, in particular, Curacao, St. Martin, Aruba, regarding extreme terms and conditions pertaining to financial aid in this time, in this time of crisis, such as COVID-19, and like I said earlier, particularly in relation to St. Martin, the aftermath of Irma, which is gravely to be seen on the island still, where people are still homeless, having no normal housing facilities with sanitary facilities, and the rule of the islands in general. Would you consider these methods and treatment as colonialism of itself in the extreme form? That is a question I would like to pose to you, Dr. Coben, after you make your introduction of yourself. I would appreciate it if you can give an answer to that question to start with. Thank you. Let me unmute you. I'll unmute you. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Coben.
Yes. Good afternoon to all, and good evening to you, Kenneth, on where you are. The issue of what we're speaking of today, and I commend all of the speakers who have spoken before. My name is Carlisle Corbin. I'm an international advisor on governance. I've done, as you indicated, I've done some work in Statia, particularly with the 2014 referendum, as well as having had an opportunity to, in the post-referendum period, to do the draft of a constitution which would have been reflective of the result of the referendum, that of autonomy. But of course, as we know, as my brother Clyde Van Putten mentioned, it was dismantled. Essentially, it's interesting that you use that term, dismantle. When the 10-10-10 process occurred, it was referred to as dismantlement, but also there's a secondary dismantlement that has occurred with respect to Statia, and certainly the democratic government was set aside in favor of direct rule. And you could probably look at the earlier period, 2009, when the British did a very similar thing with respect to the islands of the Turks and Caicos. Now, and the issue of, these issues that you are raising, and it has been raised by most of the members of the panel on the questions of the issues that are occurring in each island, are really reflective of a broader question. We refer to it as a general question. And that is the question of which has been mentioned by Clyde, has been mentioned by James, the issue of the incomplete decolonization. And this is something which has been reflected in the court cases that have been filed in the Dutch courts on the question of Statia, also have been reflected in much of the dialogue, the issue of the incomplete decolonization. So these concerns of that have been expressed, the settler colonialism in Bonaire, the conditionality of the post-hurricane and also now COVID aid are all part of all symptoms of the broader question, and the broader question, of course, being that of incomplete decolonization. And we know that the issue of self-determination is, in fact, really the last stage of decolonization. Self-determination is, in fact, the final stage of emancipation. One of the questions that flashed up related to reparations, and indeed, the two issues are certainly combined, and they're not separate in any way. It is from the broader perspective that we really are, indeed, in the context of your question, we really are looking at a modernized colonial period. There's reference to neo-colonialism, but I don't often use that word as it relates to the territories, because I often refer to it in the context of what independent states are going through in their efforts to develop. But we really are returning. I wrote a piece some years ago after the situation in Statia and the situation in Turks and Caicos. And what you're speaking of is recolonizing the colony, because indeed the colony never really disappeared. It just was transformed into something else using different words and different titles, different language. The British do that, the French do that, the Dutch as well as the US. So in a sense, the issues of consensus laws, CFT, post-colonial, or rather I should say post-hurricane and COVID aid, all of those things are symptoms of a broader picture. In the case of the Bonaire, Statia, Seba, you have the unilateral anchoring, which I think James would hopefully elaborate on a bit more, because he was very active in that movement to seek to try to prevent that from occurring. Unfortunately, it happened in any case. So this is basically an attempt to legitimize the modernized colonialism that exists. Now, one also has to look at the question of the Statia referendum in 2014, which had, as a result of the difficulties, and Clyde can certainly elaborate on that, in terms of all that took place there, even as people were voting for autonomy. And then subsequently the new government, which was headed by Clyde, was able to adopt a motion that endorsed and recognized the result of that referendum for autonomy, but that was ignored. And of course, similarly, as James mentioned in his statement, in the following year, 2005, the referendum result, which rejected the issue of the current status, the public entity status, that was also ignored. So essentially, we are looking at a period of human rights violation with respect to the issue of self-determination as a fundamental human right. And there's been clear references to this over the years by the General Assembly of the United Nations. So really, and I just conclude quickly, I'm sorry if I'm a little verbose here, but the issue is, how do we proceed to bring this to the attention and to bring this final chapter to the side. We do know that in the end, reference was made to the third international decade for the eradication of colonialism. The Committee of 24, the Special Committee on Decolonization, just adopted a resolution that would create the fourth international decade, which would begin in January 2021. So in fact, it's going now through the procedures that hopefully will be adopted by the General Assembly in December, in which case we must conclude that all territories, those that are formally listed and those that are not, it should be made very clear that all territories be covered under that, under the issues and initiatives that will remain. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, Dr. Corbin. Thank you for that explanation. I think, like I said earlier, there are going to be a lot of questions to these proceedings, and I will again request that the public hold on to the question. And I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in into the chat. Our sister Cindy will be taking together with me the responsibility to select those questions and put them to the different panel members. Thank you very much, Dr. Corbin. Dr. Arundel, could you please do your introduction? You have as well 10 minutes in regarding to the different and various issues as you've been listening to them. Please take from this moment on the time to make your own introduction regarding to everything which you have been listening to as up until this point. Thank you very much. You're welcome to start. The floor is yours, Dr. Arundel. Let me unmute you there, please. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Arundel. Can you hear me?
Yes, no, yes, I'm now unmuted. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Let me, like everyone else, say good afternoon to the panel as well as the public, and take this opportunity to thank you and your organization and the entire team, to be part of this important conversation. I know it will not end here today, and I believe that it's a conversation that must be had nonetheless. So I really applaud you for your initiative. Regarding the invitation that you sent, I saw a question in there for me, and I'm going to try to put it all together based on what I heard. I saw a question in there for me regarding the Dutch influences / interference and dominant power imposing. And the question was whether or not I believe that those influences and interference are an infringement on self-determination. Termination, and then it said destruction of a people identity, culture, and constitute neo-colonialism. Well, I think Dr. Corbin was reading my mind because I was going to go along there. But I want to start with setting up a caveat, basically reminding you that I'm a linguist with a specialization in Caribbean languages. And so oftentimes when I come to the conversation, I'm coming with that in mind. I want you to bear that in mind. And what I want to point out for our discussion today is that a number of experts across the various disciplines in academia, as well as a lot of indigenous societies as well, have shown us with concrete evidence, with concrete scientific basis, that language determines not just what we talk or think about, but also what we can talk and think about. And I think this is important, what we can, so what our limitations are, etc. This is important, not just to our discussion today, but also in our conversation going forward, because the way we speak shapes the way we think and the way we behave. And this is really important for this topic. As a people living in colonized societies, I believe that some of us are limited in even the language we use to talk about our reality. And therefore we are debilitated in what we perceive as our options for engaging in solutions for our problem. I want to put that there on the table. The other thing, for example, when I looked at some of the comments that were made in some of the languages, the terminology that was just used, and I'm not saying this as a form of disrespect or to diminish in any way the intentions of the organization for putting on this, but just the very invitation to this conversation, I believe, is a reflection of this. Dr. Corbin alluded to the term neocolonialism, or the neocolonial situation, which from the time I read it, it kind of, it jolted me a little bit. But there was also a statement in the invitation that said the previous statute meant equality and independence for the islands. But the reality is that the government in the past 30 years is increasingly dictating its policy for the islands, making autonomy an illusion. Now that's a lot to handle, to stomach. And if you're like me, you fight these systems of evil when you hear terminology like that I just heard. So when we look at the very definition of colonialism, because a lot of my people, they seem to want to make up of colonialism to justify a lot of things that are taking place by the Dutch. So for the purpose of the discussion today, I consulted a number of sources, and I try to look at a range of backgrounds. And I'll give you an example from the Encyclopedia Philosophy. Define colonialism as a practice of domination, which involves the subjugation of one people to another. One of the difficulties in defining colonialism is that it is hard to distinguish it from imperialism. That's Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy. Dictionary.com, very common one used mostly these days by online family, says that the colonialism is defined as the control or governing influence of a nation over a dependent country, territory, or people. National Geographic defines it as control by one power over a dependent area or people. It occurs when one nation subjugates another, conquering its population and exploiting it, often while forcing its own language and cultural values upon a people. And then, I said, well, let me look at an older dictionary, maybe something as, as old as Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, which defines it as control or governing influence of a nation over a dependent country, territory, or people. So we can go back and forth how we want with this conversation, but what I want to point out, and the point I'm trying to make, is that colonialism, by its very definition, is evil and it is unnatural. And it involves the remote control of governing of a people and for the benefit of the colonial power. So for me, since by its definition, colonialism never ended, as Dr. Corbin stated, in these islands, it is a misnomer to speak about neocolonialism because it has never ended. So it cannot be new, it cannot start over, it cannot be it never ended. And so the question is, what are we going to do about it? And as I said, language has power, and that the language that we use to tell our story is critical. So for me, moving forward, contradictions like country St. Martin, these are not fortuitous terminology. They indicate the state of mental colonization of politicians and the bankruptcy of a colonial education system, intent on self-preservation, and design to damage the minds and souls of our children. They are also meant to confuse people who, faced with such chaos, especially coming from the elected officials, would then be expected to opt for the status quo or to run to their colonizer for their salvation. And to me, we have to be very careful. I'm listening very carefully to the language that is being even used by my co-panelists, and I'm going like, this is part of the problem. Terms like autonomous countries, Dutch Caribbean, French Caribbean in the case of St. Martin, or English Caribbean and Dutch Caribbean part of the kingdom. These ignore the fact that this act of naming these islands, Dutch or French in the case of St. Martin, is in effect claiming these islands and their people for the Dutch crown, the French, and thus attempting to erase completely from the minds of St. Martiners, and I'm now speaking on behalf of the St. Martin people, the fact that our islands are Caribbean islands. And I think we have to be very careful with that. When we use this type of language of an islands, we are in essence whitewashing our history, and we are robbing our people of the historical memories, dampening their appetite for free.
I think Dr. Arundel is having some difficulties with the connection. Dr. Arundel, are you still there?
No, she's out.
Dr. Arundel, are you still there?
No,
Okay, hold on. I'm unmuting you again. Could you repeat something? Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I don't know
Okay,
what
good.
happened, but I was muted and I disappeared. I'm saying when we use this language to refer to ourselves and our islands, we are in essence whitewashing our history, and we are robbing our people of their historical memories. And we are also dampening their appetite for freedom. And this is a very critical point I want to make, because what I want to summarize in my answer to the question was that I believe that colonialism is an evil that must be totally eradicated. And the way we in St. Martin can do this and to truly govern ourselves is by becoming a sovereign state. For me, personally, a number of people here in St. Martin, any option between that and the status quo is an open invitation to continued interference and an impediment to our true sense of self-governance. Because if you look at the definition of self, self literally means self. So any other option that is not political independence for St. Martin, Tories, is continuation of the same. And as Dr. Corbin also pointed out, he said they've been changed the language, they changed the packaging, they turned it around a little bit to modernize it. At the end of the day, it will continue unless we as a Caribbean people take the stance to say we ourselves, we're not even asking them to do it. We are saying eradicate colonialism completely by becoming people that govern ourselves. And that the only way to do that is to become a sovereign country and to seek full political independence. And my last comment before I leave, on behalf of, I want to apologize to my comrade James Finies, who said he'd asked the governments of these islands to lend their support. And I know sometimes elected officials don't know how to behave. So on behalf of St. Martin, I want to say to Mr. James Finies and the other people in the struggle for self-determination, governance, independence, that we in St. Martin fully support their struggle, and we commit ourselves to lending our voice wherever we can. And so I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for a very good and detailed presentation in relation to the issues, but more importantly, languages. And I anticipated, I didn't use the terminology neocolonialism for nothing. It was expected that I will get a more nuanced address in relation to term, because like you stated, I think even our languages and names have been hijacked and continue to be hijacked, and also the collective memories of our ancestors, which actually throughout the Caribbean, not only the Dutch part, like we call it the Dutch speaking part, but throughout the whole Caribbean, if you look at the heritage of our ancestral teachings and names and science, we have lost track of all of that. So I think it starts with language, indeed, it's very important, and the collective memory which you emphasize on, again, is very important, going back to where our ancestors started and where our civilization started. And I think we have a lot of work to do. A very other
Can
important,
I,
yeah,
sorry, Chairman, can I just say something going forward? And I'm
yeah.
going to ask you, this is really out of politeness. I do not wish to be referred to, or I hope you will never refer to me as coming from the Dutch-speaking Caribbean. St. Martin people are an English-speaking people. We speak English. That's our language. And so while we are colonized by the Dutch and the French, we are not a Dutch-speaking people. We do not come from a Dutch-speaking territory. We come from a very English-speaking St. Martin.
Okay, thank you for that comment as well. And I think another aspect which we look at times overlook, and you may correct me if I'm wrong in this, any member of the panel, in relation to colonialization, we tend to forget what we call global capitalism, as I will put it, which is very much responsible for the institutions and the fabric of the colonial system as such. When we look at reparation in relation to what has been stolen in capital from us, it's very important to recognize that global capitalism is very much global capital, which is responsible for the deeds and the atrocities which are still being inflicted on our people up until today. So I think global capital is something we need to look at clearly and see how we fit in and our plight fit in there at the same time. Again, thank you for a staggering introduction and presentation. I would like to go to our last panel member, and that would be Dr. Atwell Kane from living right now in Aruba. Dr. Kane, welcome, and the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes. Let me unmute you too. Sorry about it. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. King.
Right now, okay. Thank you, Brother Kenneth. Good afternoon to all brothers and sisters and everybody else. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. And many thanks to the speakers who spoke before. I particularly liked what Dr. Arundel said in the sense of the epistemology of things, how we address certain subjects. In the sense, I think she's calling for the decolonization of the way we think and the way we speak. Anyway, let me start by first making reference to a few Caribbean thinkers in relation to their encouragement and work connected to Caribbean people agency in the sense of being. We can begin by reading Paget Henry's epic book, Caliban's Reason, Introducing Afro-Caribbean Philosophy, published in 2000. Paget Henry is an Antiguan living in the United States, ex-professor at in Philadelphia. Right now, I will just quote from Curious essay on the evolution of Lewis Gordon thought, from bad faith to disciplinary decadence, in CLR James Journal of 2008. Curious wrote, Henry is aware that colonialism and racism continue to assume that colonial subjects do not speak, therefore do not think. Because they do not speak and do not think, they therefore cannot emerge or stand out. They are in Fanon's term non-beings. They are situated, as Gordon says, in the zone of non-being. That is what Hegel meant by saying that Africa does not consciously exist and that Africa does not have structures of being, pushing and becoming to examine. Right. I purposely chose to mention Henry, Fanon, and Gordon, three Afro-Caribbean scholars, of course, and there are many others. I mean, who will forget Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey, right? But these are persons who have always placed the people of African descent at the center of their philosophical thought. A thought that is aligned to a sense of being, consciousness, freedom, and independence. Right? Now, seeing that I'm now living in Aruba, previously I lived in St. Vincent, the Netherlands, for many, many years, and now for the last 2 years, I'm Aruba. Aruba was formerly one of the 6 Dutch Caribbean islands. That has changed in the sense of status, political statehood. Since the 1930s, politicians in Aruba have been pushing for separation, but then separation not within the Dutch kingdom in totality, but separation from Curacao. In 1949, Eamon of the People's Folks Party was one of the first Arubans who in a roundtable conference in The Hague made it known to the Dutch government that Aruba seeks to be separated from the rest of the Dutch Antilles, but want to remain in the Dutch colonial construction. The Dutch implemented in 1954 the statutory formation of the Dutch Antilles with the previously mentioned 6 islands. Mention them again: Aruba, Curacao, Bonaire, Saint Eustatius, and St. Martin. However, Aruba had this thing of not wanting to be ruled by Curacao within the context of the Dutch colonial setup. This stimulated the Arubans to struggle more for self-determination. Central to this struggle was a politician called Betico Cruz of the MEP, the Electoral Movement of the People. He and his movement, using identity politics, kept the ideology of freedom alive in 1986 to a statehood status within the Dutch kingdom. Recently, Mike Eamon, son of the Eamon of 1949, the ex-prime minister from 2009 to 2017, classified in an article that the Aruban struggle for statehood was a marriage between heart and consciousness. Right? According to him, that has been and remains the leading ideology of self-determination since the 1940s to today. This meant that Aruba got rid of the middleman Curacao and attained a direct constitutional relationship with the politicians in The Hague. A relationship which is pregnant with ambiguities and sentiments, especially in terms of financial, political, and social affairs. The way forward. Up until 2019, Aruba could be classified as an affluent nation, small with a population of approximately 116,000 persons, including illegal persons, but was doing well financially in comparison to other Caribbean islands. From 1986 to 2019.
But after you have a lot of interference in the back.
Sorry?
You have interference coming from you.
Oh, sorry.
Some noise. Don't know from where, but continue.
From the paper. I think it's on the paper.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, because you have approximately a little less than 4 minutes leave.
From 1986 to 2019, there were a few persons making claims to independence, but to my knowledge, this did not come from the established political parties, the ruling class, and even the average citizens. The infightings and disagreements between the Arubans and the Dutch politicians are mostly about balancing budgets, cronyism, and some human rights issues. However, As long as there were American tourists visiting the island in their multitude, who cared about what the Dutch thought or said? The politicians were willing to maintain the status quo and do what they liked. However, COVID-19 virtually attacked the island in early this year and really gave Arubans more to think about. Aruba expected the Dutch to render financial assistance in the manner in which this was given, for example, to Italy and Portugal in the framework of the European Union. But this has only produced, for the time being, stalemates and more quarrels. The Dutch seems to view the recent economic and financial problems of Aruba as an opportunity to reshape the constitutional makeup of Aruba. At present, there are more than 800 active cases of corona sickness on the island. The question right now is who is willing to speak about the decoloniality of the mind, the decoloniality of the political system, the decoloniality of the financial dependency, and the decoloniality of the education system, for that matter, the decolonizing of the current mindset. An essential question is, what do the current financial circumstances mean to Arubans in terms of their neocolonial status? Even though Dr. Arundel just said that there's nothing as new as neocolonial. Colonialism has continued to be what it was. Anyway, we speak about that later. And their neocolonial status, their agency, and self-determination. So in essence, I'm saying right now it seems that people have more on their heads than speaking about their own agency and self-determination. In terms of colonial and neocolonial, well, they are just labels which could actually mean the same thing, because there is no new colonialism without having colonialism. And people speak in many times about post-colonialism, but there seems to be not a post-colonialism, but a decolonialism. But then these are a lot of semantics and playing with words. But another moment we'll speak about the different sort of colonialism within the Caribbean. That is all for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Arthur Kane, for that introduction as well. Before we go to the listeners and the rest of the audience who are listening in on this program, I would like to come back to the issue of languages and language in general. And I'm putting this question to Dr. Arundel in particular. I'd like to have, in the first instance, her reaction to this question as well. When we speak about English, I mean, English as of itself is not our ancestral languages. Now, when we speak about changing the mindset of our people in relation to names and languages, isn't it also important, because according to me and what I'm seeing in our communities throughout Europe, in our African communities, and in the Caribbean for that matter, there's no one school or one institution which attempt to at least create or teach one African language to our people. And wouldn't that be an important step going forward as well? And looking at the educational, prescriptive form of education throughout these islands as it continues to persist. And I think even to Mr. Harrigan, he mentioned that in the beginning, that in relation to the brain drain, our people are being Eurocentrically, prescriptively being educated from a Eurocentric point of view. And they are trying to actually keep the educated one to fit into their service of their own interests when they leave the countries or the islands in Europe, for instance, to remain in Europe serving their own purpose. isn't the educational system something we need to look at? And we don't have our own schools in that regard. So isn't that also a condition which is imperative going forward when we speak about looking at the educational system in general? How we alter and change that in order to change or educate the mindset of our people. Like I said today, I think partly I said in this proceeding, we need to look at things and use common language so that we can at least bring on the public at large to understand which we are speaking about. So a lot has to do with education, Dr. Arundel. How we go about these specific issues as I just outlined, according to you?
Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. And I think it's broken on, if I understand you correctly, in two different sub questions. One had to do with the mindset and about African languages, and the other one has to do with education in general. Well, let me go in the sequence that you went. Yes, English is not the ancestral language necessarily of all of the people of St. Martin or the Caribbean, right? But don't forget, the African continent has thousands of languages. Just keep that in mind as we're having this conversation. Thousands of languages, and within one particular group or ethnic group, you could get 10 to 20 to 30 languages, even within that small group. So bear that in mind, that most people throughout the world are multilingual, and especially on the African continent, extremely multilingual. And so if you were going to choose, you'd have to have a conversation about which language and how many and when to stop, etc. What I want to say about the English language in the Caribbean, the so-called, what some people call the creolized version of, reference to standard English. Some of us disagree with that description as well. But the St. Martin language, for example, is a very, like the Papiamento in Curacao, is a language that was created right here in this space at this time by these people since early settlement. The variety that we speak in St. Martin is our ancestral language that we have forged over the years in this space called St. Martin. So that is a case for me already accomplished. That is the people's language. Now, what do you do with that in terms of the mindset that you were asking about? I think it all starts with self. I like to believe that everything starts with self, but also in terms of, we'll get to the education. So I personally, for example, whereas I was named by my mother based on what she knew, how she knew, and how she named me, I chose to break the cycle. Both my kids have African names. I picked them out very early that going forward, we are going to try to reconnect to the African continent. I went about very deliberately in choosing why Swahili names and which regions, etc. So I made a deliberate, attempt in my life to break that cycle, because I can't do a lot going backwards, but I can do a lot going forward. With regard to the education system, I tend to distinguish between schooling and educating, because schooling, you can school anybody, send them to the institution and you get what you get. With regard to education and moving forward, because your question is how do we fix it for the future in terms of the prescriptive for education, my recommendation is to, and I've been talking about this for a while, I'm writing about it in a book that I have coming up, is to create a modernized education system in these spaces, these Caribbean spaces, based on our core values. You got to start with self. You have to start with in, going out. So what are your core values as a society? And every society is going to have a different set of core values. For us in St. Martin, we know what are important core values that worked for our society. You can talk about discipline, but you can also talk about love and community and how to work together collectively, etc. So you can build in those core values in whatever your new form is, and then you ask yourself what would be the right route, the right strategies, the right formats to get those. We know today, especially with COVID, that IT, or let's say technology-based education, is going to be, we know already even before COVID, that's the wave of the future. So in the Caribbean, does it make sense for us to have this crazy conversation about trade schools versus academic schools? Is that a real conversation to have moving forward in the future? Yet we hold on to that old system. In the Caribbean, does it make sense for us to talk about summer vacation when we have summer all year round? Are we going to hold on to outdated systems And are we going to pattern a new education system that's based on our realities, our core values? And to me, every space has its own unique situations. And to me, that's where you build it out from. Your students, in my view, need to become competent to function in the society in which they live, and at the same time be able to participate in the global community. So they're going to have a lot of skills where they're going to have to be able to move and to interact with the global community. But those are the core skills that you need in any so-called education system. And then, of course, when I say starting from the majority of the people in St. Martin and in the Caribbean have African ancestry. Africa cannot be negated in this conversation. Yes, it has always been Eurocentric, but we can no longer negate Africa. Africa has to be a very strong part of our core. And yeah, that's it in terms of how to move forward. But every space is going to have something that looks unique to that space.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Arundel, for that additional light comment, explanation rather. Thank you. Okay, Sister Cindy, I would like now to take the next hour, for question and answer from, because I think we have a lot of the posed questions in the chat. Could you select a few and bring them out to any one particular member of the panel for that matter? Thank you.
Okay. One of the questions that we're still, I'm going to summarize them for those of you who did post your questions in the chat. I'm going to summarize them and post them to the body. One of the questions were, what is there to gain by maintaining the colonial relationship? So that means being that we're still colonized in this particular framework. Why do you think that the Netherlands is continuously wanting to stay on with these relationships with the islands in the Caribbean? Can anyone continue that question?
Cindy, let me interrupt you there for a minute, please. I think you're breaking up and you're not coming in clear with what you're stating. Sometimes it helps, not that we don't want to see your face, but sometimes it helps if you mute the camera.
Video, yes.
Yeah, where you're having a weak internet. So when you finish with that, then you can put back on the camera. Thank you for that. So did everyone hear the question which Cindy was posing to the floor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Who would like to react to that question? Anyone of the panel members for that matter?
Look, I could listen, for me, it's very simple. Is there a gain to maintaining the colonial system? No, not for the islands. There is no gain. In St. Martin particularly, there's absolutely no gain for us. When you look at the things that St. Martin as an island takes care of itself, whether it's financially, whether it's educationally, there is no gain. Who gains from this relationship is the Netherlands. So to me, that's a simplified answer. And I'm saying this based on facts.
Okay, thank you. Cindy?
If I could jump in here.
Question.
Hold on. Who is that?
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Putten.
Yeah, to comment on the reason as to why the islands, the Dutch want to hold on. I believe that there is a benefit. I think that the Dutch want to continue to have a presence in the Caribbean. And definitely these islands are being used as a sort of a roadmap, a link for them to the islands. Where Station, for instance, is concerned, let's say these, what they call Besden. I think some years ago, there was some studies carried out with regards to whether there was oil on the Sabre Bank, yes or no. But it is called Sabre Bank, but they have the different islands in question, including us, would have an interest as far as that is concerned. I think that some time back, there was also a study carried out in the Leeward Islands, where it is also said that there may be gas in the island. So I believe that it is just not, staying for staying sake, because we would remember that in 1975, when Suriname gained its independence after a very turbulent period. The Dutch, I think at that time it was the Labour Prime Minister, I don't remember his name at this point in time, Den Uyl, I think it was Joop Den Uyl, and he promised that he was prepared to send the independence to the island via the islands via postal, via mail, email, you know. So I do believe that there is a benefit for them, because again, I'm saying we are used as the link, you know, for them to, you know, continue to maintain, you know, and carry out their geopolitics in the region.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Van Putten. But I don't even think when it comes to colonialism and maintaining the benefit of colonialism, it has only to do with the Caribbean parts. If you look at what the so-called former colonizers are doing in the motherland, today Africa, and what is happening there, you know, the wealth of Africa, I mean, brilliant and diamonds are all over in Belgium and the European states, so to speak, uranium. We must go back into history and look at things. If you look at most European countries and the so-called colonial powers, they don't own oil, they don't own any natural resources when it comes to uranium, gold, etc., etc. So there's always a reason to dominate and exploit and colonize other parts of the world. And if you look at the Chinese now in relation to Africa, and the Caribbean for that matter as well, colonialism continues to grow, reposition itself based on global capitalism again. So I don't think it only has to do with the Caribbean for that matter. It's all over there, the asset and everything when it comes to financial power, because we have to distinguish too, like I always say, between political power and financial power. If we look at South Africa today still, and after Mandela was free and you had all the forgiving business as usual, and you look at the township today, South Africa, the leader still does not really have no economical power. You know, so it's the big corporation, Shell. Shell is not from the Netherlands. Shell is from the Ogoni region in Nigeria. So it's all about economical power in the final analysis of everything. And there's where I think we need to look at our way of thinking in enhancing ourselves financially as well. Cindy, you're still there?
Yes, I'm here. We do have another question. So
yeah, go ahead.
Are there significances between the political arrangements in the individual islands with the Netherlands?
Anybody?
Are there significant differences between the political arrangements in individual islands? I'm not sure that was clear to the entire body.
Did you all get the question?
Are there significant differences between the political arrangements of the individual islands with the Netherlands?
Yep. Yes, they are.
Can I make a point on that, if possible?
Go ahead, Dr. Corbin.
Yes, I think you have two different sets of islands political arrangements. You have the best, which are considered, and if we get back to the nomenclature again, the terminology, referred to as partially integrated. They are not fully integrated, but they're partially integrated, which places them below the threshold of full self-government. And there is a definition for integration, which is contained in Resolution 1541 of the United Nations. The other three are effectively semi-autonomous, and the issue of questioning how we refer to as autonomy, there's also references to autonomy and the minimum standards of autonomy, which are included in the self-governance indicators, which are used to, which in fact were used in 2012 to assess the question of the minimum standard of autonomy and whether that minimum standard was met by the autonomous arrangement in Curacao at the time. So you do have some distinctions there, but these place all six in the position of political periphery, below the standard that's required under international law, but not on the agenda of the United Nations, which addresses these matters. So in the new decade of the fourth decade, which we hope will be adopted in December, we will have the opportunity to assure that the territories that are in the periphery are also addressed within the framework of this discussion. Otherwise, it's very difficult, and as we know, certainly Mr. Van Putten, James Finies, know very well the challenge it takes to get the attention of certain countries, even in our own region, with respect to these issues, because in fact they have been, if we go back to education, they have been educated in many ways to the misunderstanding that the territories have achieved what they wish and have achieved full self-government by virtue of their link, which remains very much a colonial link, with the cosmopole.
Any reaction to the explanation of Dr. Coben?
No. Mr. Can you unmute Mr. Finies, please? I can't do it.
I beg your pardon, Cindy?
Can you unmute James? He would like to say something.
Okay, I'm noticing James there and also Brother Ringo. So I'll unmute James first, and then Brother Ringo, you can go ahead. James, go ahead, Brother James.
My mic was unmuted, so I couldn't participate. Yes. So the two things of the first two questions. The first was about the Dutch of colonialism. No, we have a very different perspective on the Dutch we see from our government point of view, from our politicals, from our leaders. The Dutch are not seen as really they are, because they are simple economic gains around here. We see them as politicians. Our leaders are politicians. Let me explain like this. Our leaders are politicians. They seek votes from the people to get empowered. And then they're gonna negotiate discuss with the Dutch, who doesn't have that same perspective on this island. So the Dutch only see us from an economical point of view. And our leaders who are in discussion with the Dutch see the discussion as a political human relationship. So that is where everything starts going wrong since the beginning till now, because till now they don't see it as a relationship. The Dutch is not our mother, it's not our friend, it's not our nothing. They just see you as a subject, economic subject. And then I think when our leaders start understanding that, things can start changing in our favor. And that is a very, because the Dutch never know what they gain from us, when they annex our islands. They gain about 400 miles of exclusive economic zone in the Caribbean. The whole Caribbean Sea from Bonaire reaches the Caribbean, part of it becomes Dutch. It's not about who win elections, who is against who on the islands. That's why it's an internal discussion. Dutch doesn't care about it. Just gain all the territory that is not undeveloped, but all the pristine natural resources below it. That is the Dutch agenda. And as long as we keep talking about us, who win election, who is against who on this island, they will keep doing that with us. So that is one point I want to make clear, that they only have one objective to be here, and now at this moment, what they do with our islands, Curacao and Aruba, they are part of the setup to for the takeover of the world's largest oil reserves and gas. That is the Venezuela, Orinoco, and the Southern Caribbean belt. That's why they're here now. And Aruba and Bonaire and Curacao is being used in that strategy to the other United States to get hold on these islands thing. So it's nothing about COVID, and COVID of course come now, but they're using it, but it's nothing about internal corruption. It's not about those things. It's just about having the upper hand in the next move. So that's one I think I want to contribute about why they're here. They're here for that only objective, nothing else.
Thank you, Brother James. I think it coincides your explanation again with global capitalism. And if we look at historically the Dutch way of executing colonialism, everything they did was based on the rendement, which means the interest that comes out of anything. So indeed, certain parts of these islands have been used logistically speaking, but right now, ganging up with the US in relation to Venezuela, reserves and oil and everything, which has the biggest reserve on oil on the planet right now. This is where the Dutch interest comes in more even imminent in this region, and we need to look at these things fairly. Going on to Brother Ringo, and then I will pose a question and help Sister Cindy, because it seems that she having a bit of a difficulty with her connection. So I will try and select, I'll go back to Cindy.
I think it's better now, but.
Oh, it's better now, Cindy. Okay, right.
Yeah.
So in any case, what I will do, I'll go to Brother Ringo. Then I have a question from a brother in Ghana, which I would like to put to the panel in general, members in general. And then you can then continue to select the further questions as we continue. Okay, Cindy?
Sure.
Okay. Brother Ringo, go ahead, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Brother Kenneth. I have to say, the Netherlands being here in Curacao, in our experience here, we see only destruction. Destruction and more destruction, yes? Some people talking about economy, yeah? The Dutch people bringing economy in Curacao. My question to them is, which economy? We don't see it. Some people talking about that the Dutch people are building things. The local people are seeing nothing, are feeling nothing about that. Because everything what is about the local people is going backwards. Yeah. So during all these years, them being destroying everything in Curacao. Yes. So I agree with Brother James on this matter, and also have to say, in the days December 2018, I was in Bonaire. And one of the events that Brother James did organize, I have to say, I couldn't believe my eyes about the abomination of the Dutch in Bonaire and how did they destroy the nature and the culture in Bonaire. So the same thing is happening here in Curacao also for many years. Yeah, the plague that we have here and the destruction of our family and the culture, heritage, etc., etc. Yeah, education, social affairs, etc., etc. Yes. Okay, that's it.
Okay. I have, like I said, a question here from Ghana first MP. He stated Dr. Kwame Nkrumah once famously said, "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all other things shall be added unto ye."
Yep.
The vast majority of the people of the world, about 90%, have heeded that advice and opted for political independence. Why is that most of the remaining dependent territories in the world can be found in the Caribbean today? What is understood by self-determination, and why is this a goal we should aspire to or struggle to achieve? Um, who would like to elaborate on that statement from the panel point of view? Well, let me put it this way. Let me go
Can
to
I give it
Sister
a shot?
Arundel. Yeah, you took, yeah, you, but go ahead. You saved me.
Okay.
Explain
No,
away.
because I don't think I'm familiar with the quote, and I think I could not have said it any better than it was said by Kwame Nkrumah, because that is exactly it. You know, you start there and then you build what you need to create. And the question that was asked is, why is it that all these the less than 1% is still found in the Caribbean? I think you, Brother Cuvalay, mentioned it just now. Our schooling. Our schooling, the system was put in place to perpetuate the system. You know, if you want to condition people, you start with their minds, you start with their way they think, you start with their world belief. If they bow down to your gods, if they bow to you, if they, you know, this is how you do it. And so, and that's why I say this language is very important, because what it does to our people, especially when you look at what's happening in the COVID conversation, it's like, you know, if you hear it on the street, we're going dead if the Dutch don't help us. But that's a narrative that was created, that there's no way, you cannot live without your kidnapper, your enslaver, you cannot survive. That is a conditioning that has taken place over the years, and it is very hard, even among friends and family members and people that I associate with politically. They cannot get it in their head to see themselves disconnected from the Dutch, you know, for what all intents and purposes, you know, and there's this conversation, and I think that's, and I don't know if you remember, I responded to your question in your email, and you asked me whether or not, if the email was finished. Yeah. This is exactly what I want to say, you know, this whole, we twist ourselves into pretzels, literally, to try to stay in the kingdom, to try to stay in the Republic of France, you know, because for whatever reasons, our language does not permit us to think beyond certain solutions to our problem. So there's this conversation now taking place about being independent in the kingdom, you know, and we'll do everything to stay in the kingdom. And so my other question to that is, okay, if you can do all these great things while in the kingdom, why do we need to stay in the kingdom? Especially since it poses no benefit for you. So it is a conditioning, and it is something that we have to work actively on to get people to think differently. It is quicker in St. Martin and in these islands to believe that any European politician is more honest, trustworthy, acceptable than your local politicians. Oh, they're corrupt. You don't know them, but you're so sure that the Dutch are going to come in, they're going to arrest, they're going to lock up, they're going to, you know, they're going to wipe out corruption in these, because it is easier to accept that a man that looks like your God, that he's definitely your savior, and that your people who live among you, who feed you, who shelter you, that these people are the most despised, the most corrupt, the most untrustworthy people. This is part of the conditioning process, and why we have to do everything in our power to stamp it out, because it's in our language. You have to resist it with your being, with your body, with your language, with your action. And you have to pass it on to the next generation. The school system is not going to do it.
Well, to add to that, then you can ask yourself the question, Dr. Arundel there, because I always take that, what I'm going to say now, as an example, because I can remember when I was growing up as a child, and up until this point, as you speak about mental conditioning, we always tend to have this notion describing the English predominantly part of the Caribbean, which actually are now independent states, although the Commonwealth get into their way in many ways by trying to dictate, but they didn't die. Those communities didn't die. They are still there, and they got independence with a warm handshake, like I said, from Britain. And look at them today. So why? And I tend to think, because my mother came from St. Kitts, and the way of thinking about self-determination with identity at the same time I tend to think that, and that's a unique way. You even see it here in the Netherlands how the Dutch separate the groups. You have a portion of money for the Suriname, they have a portion for the Antillian and so forth. And so here you have all of these groups competing and fighting against others. So it's called divide and rule at the same time. But how is it demographically speaking and geographically speaking that we are having such a hard time? Because up until today, sometimes when I speak about to speak with my African sisters and brothers, the first instant acute tendency is to outline to me that their greater grandfathers from Germany or Scotland. Why is it we are having it such an extreme, difficult way in changing those dynamics among our communities in the so-called Dutch-speaking parts, for that matter?
I want to piggyback on what Brother Kane said just now when he mentioned some of the great reads for us as a people. And I think we could add that list, France, Black Skin, White Mask, in terms of helping us to understand the schizophrenia that is created in the colonized mind and in the region and how we adapt. Now, what can we do? Because we may know the problems, right? The question is, what's the solution? I say we start with we resist, just like our ancestors did up until the period of emancipation, up until this conversation now that is now a little more open about reparations. But I remember when I was growing up, when Rastafari was talking about reparations, everybody thought that Rastaman was crazy. But you have to keep resisting. You have to keep resisting. Now today it's an academic conversation. But a few years ago, reparation was like for the loonies, right? And so you have to know that it is wrong. I will insist that colonialism is evil and it is unnatural. So you have to resist it. You cannot want to be partially in the kingdom and partially out. Those of us who keep maintaining those positions, we are aiding and abetting the system. We are part of the conversation by keeping it, by wanting to stay in, and it ain't so bad. And no, it is bad. It is bad, and we have to resist it. Seek ye first the political kingdom, and then all else will be added.
Okay, thank you, dear Sister Arundel, for that explanation. Mr. Van Putten, hold on a minute, please. I know I have to try and you're gonna get in. Just give me a few. Just bear with me. I want to try and get in some of the questions. Note that reaction from you, and I'll pull you in a few minutes. I need to bring in a few more questions from the audience so that we don't leave them with a sense of not being part of this process. Sister Cindy.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, do you have a few more questions before Brother Van Putten give his response to what he would like to comment to from the chat?
Yes, so one of the questions include, where are political parties on the question of their relationship to independence? And that could be expanded in the sense that where their relationship to the Netherlands in this regard, in contrast to the relationship to the masses, so with the people. Is there a difference between the relationship of political parties and their view on independence and the people? So that's one question. And the next question is more of a way forward. How do we get out of this colonial situation? And I would add another question to that, and that the last question would be: are there military installations in this part of the Caribbean?
That's it, Sister Cindy?
Yes, those are the questions. Yes.
Who would you like to pose this question to, particularly from the panel, regard to the panel?
Brother Kenneth.
Hold on, I'm getting some. Sister Cindy, you would like to put those questions to anybody particular in the panel?
Yeah, well, those on the panel who have connections to political organizations, they can voice their opinion in terms of where they are in that relationship on the question of independence.
Okay.
Okay.
Cindy. You wanna react? Yeah.
Yes.
And then from your reaction, I'll go to Mr. Clyde from Putten, because then I think I can include some of those questions in relation to his comment, most likely, I'm presuming here, but go ahead, and then I'll go down to Mr. Brother Van Putten. Okay.
Okay. The situation here in Curacao with the political parties active at the moment, all of them is holding on the leg of their mama. Yes. And the problem is that these people has been brainwashed, and one of the problems is that the media is also involved in these things that doesn't give other people who is awakened to inform these sleeping people, to wake them up and inform them that they can start working for the island. Many of these people are in a comfort zone, and it is about money. It is about money and money and money, participating in the corruption in the island, which the head of the corruption in Curacao is the Netherlands, involved in all of these things. Yes. Regarding to the independence of Curacao, we can reach the independence in Curacao, but we have to put this group aside because they are the ones for many years been troubling the process for Curacao to get its independence. Yeah, and these people need to wake up and step aside. For many years, I mean, some of them are 70, others 60, 75. Step aside, let the young people who wants to guide the islands to free the people, give them the independence, let them work and do these things. You have enough money, step aside.
Okay.
We can think, and regarding with the military bases, yes, many of people in Curacao also want the military bases from US and the Netherlands here in Curacao. Curacao is a space of peace, and we want to keep it like that. We don't want to interfere with your problem that you have with Venezuela or any other country. It is not our problem. It is your problem. Keep your problem over there. This is an area, a space of peace, and we want to keep it like that. And I have to say, I'm one member of Causa por Mí political movement who stands for the independence of Curacao. And I have to say publicly, when we got the opportunity to be in the coalition in the government, all these military bases have to move from our area.
Okay, okay, Brother Harrigan, thank you. Mr. Van Putten, Brother Van Putten, are you hearing me? Brother Van Putten.
So. Okay.
Yes.
Brother Van Putten, hold on, let me make a point of order. I wouldn't elaborate on your text, but don't do the, it doesn't work that way, okay? Not
but the moderator need to give the opportunity to the panel to be able to get their points across.
Hold on, please. I said you will get the opportunity in a few. I'm trying to balance between the public and the forum as such. So the text you send me is not tolerated. Sorry.
But okay. It's not a question of tolerating, but if you invite people on the panel, I think the role of the moderator shouldn't be as elaborate as you're doing. But anyway, to get to the point,
go ahead.
Pertaining to, I'm hearing a lot of the people talking about Holland. I think that the main problem that we have is leadership, because the point in time is that St. Martin, Curacao, and Aruba are supposed to be autonomous countries within the kingdom. As far as I'm concerned, we are independent already, because based on the 53 signatories of the Dutch, they informed the international community that Suriname, together with the six
Okay.
islands of the Netherlands, Antilles, and Holland,
Okay.
that we are independent federation.
Okay.
It is after the event in 1954 in the Concord this whole idea about the statute as we know it. So, I mean, my point is, if I look at all the so-called countries of Curacao, St. Martin, and Aruba, it just takes for them to go to their parliament, get 2/3 of the parliament, you know, to be able to say, listen, we are opting out, we want our full measure of self-government, as was agreed, and then to move on. But I think that you have a situation here where everybody wants to go to heaven and afraid to die. You understand? Look the situation that we have at this point in time in Curacao, St. Martin, and Aruba, where the Dutch have been trampling on them. Article 36, I think it is, of the Kingdom Charter states that in situations of pandemic, natural disasters, and the likes, that they are there to help each other. The so-called four countries. What you get at this point in time is the Dutch government is having the noose around their neck. We are not even, they're not even asking the Dutch to give them a grant, which basically they should do, just as is the case that they do around the world. They're saying, listen, we want a loan. We want a loan, and then you have a situation where the Dutch is dragging them through the mud. And I think that when a situation like that presented itself, what these countries should have done from the very beginning was say to the Dutch, it's unacceptable, hold their feet to the fire. But we get a lot of situations where when we out of government, we say one thing, and when we get into government, we do something else. I mean, look at small Statia. Statia didn't have the economy. Statia didn't have the so-called country status as St. Martin, Curacao, and Aruba did. But Statia stood up. Of course, eventually we were removed by force, but we stood up and we were counted. We were counted. But you have a country like St. Martin over there. St. Martin, for instance, in the aftermath of the hurricane, reached out to the Netherlands for financial assistance, in my opinion, and I have a right to speak about St. Martin because we have connections, and to a great extent I'm involved in St. Martin. The point in time I said back then, St. Martin didn't need the Dutch money. Up to this present moment, look all the red tape that they have to go through in order to be able to rebuild the country that the way that they're going. I keep on saying to people, St. Martin is $1 billion economy. I think that the local government have to apply the laws, make sure that the big fishes pay their fair contribution, where government will be able to generate more taxes, because obviously the economy was good prior to the hurricane and now later the pandemic, but the government is broke. And that is the problem. The same thing that you have in Curacao, where we know the offshore business was a good business for years, not only for Curacao, but for the rest of the Netherlands, Antilles, and the very same Holland kill it. And what we get, we have politicians acting in all of these islands, like Ringo mentioned, that they're holding on to the curtails of mama and acting in a way that we can't do without Holland. And that is the problem. So I don't blame Holland. I blame us as a people. Because again, I'm saying, if you have a government in power, a leader that is leading the country, and that government is not rising to the occasion and defending the interests of the people, then get rid of the government. And you hear the discussion, if I take, for instance, in Curacao and Aruba, they have elections next year, and you carry it to the bank. You carry it to the bank that some of the same parties that are now responsible for the mess that these islands are in the Leeward Islands, they will put them back in power. They're going to put them back in power because, first of all, we as political leaders, and I'm a politician, so I could speak in this regard. When I say to people that I'm equal to the Prime Minister in Holland, some people think that I'm crazy. But if you go on the table to negotiate with them and you see them as gods and you feel that you're inferior or unequal to them, that's where the problem starts. So I don't blame Holland for the situation that we find ourselves in. I blame our leaders. Again, I'm saying St. Martin, Curacao, and Aruba, they say they are countries, they have a parliament. If you want to get out of the situation, go to your parliament and let your parliament act.
Point taken, Brother Van Putten. Thank you.
Can I
think
ask those three questions?
Rhoda Arundel would like to react.
Quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you
On the
take
three
your hand down
questions.
now? Could you take your
Yes,
hand
yeah,
down?
yeah. I'm trying to do
Okay,
everything.
let me
at
see.
the-
Oh, I
yeah,
took it
yeah.
away already. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, quickly on the three questions. Number one, first of all, I want to, with all the most respect for my colleague, from Putten, disagree with him on this topic. Because he said that the island's already independent, and my response to that is, if we are already independent, what happened in Statia could not have happened. I mean, it would be that simple. You can't go into St. Kitts and do what you want. You can't go to Antigua and do what you want. So just the mere fact that you could do something like that in these islands says you're not independent. But political parties, I am a member of the United People's Parties. And one of my conditions for running in the last election with them was that if the party does not embrace independence, I wouldn't run. And the party has quickly and embraced independence. And as a person in the party, I remain committed to either I'm never there, or as long as I'm there, I'm pushing the independence platform. So I will continue to push it from the public sphere, but I will also continue to push it from the political group that I'm with. And if the group chooses not to embrace it any longer, for whatever reason they choose to change their position, then I know for sure I'm no longer a part of that group. And yes, so with regards to military installations, I just want to echo my brother, I think it's Ringo, that pretty much said we're a society of peace. And if you're building your future based on war, then you talk about military installations. If you're building a society based on peace and moving forward and building a better world, there's no need for military bases in your space. Yes, that's my contribution.
Mr. Finies wants to make a comment. Can you unmute his mic, please?
Yeah. Go ahead, Brother James.
Yes, I don't know how long we have time more to continue. So
we have about a half an hour time still, and I want to get some, when you finish, I want to get some more questions in from the floor.
Okay, well,
go ahead.
Okay. One main question I think will help look different at all the other questions is how to get out this colonial situation. Okay, what I realized, we realized, because we are 60 years down the line with a so-called new country, autonomy, etc., but Holland power remained excessive in this relationship. So no country with no political party who had the independence as a motive to move forward survived Holland power. They killed the leader, Batico Cruz. They voted 90% voted for independence in Aruba since the 86. This week, Aruba lost its autonomy. In Curacao, example, Wills Soberano gathered popular vote behind him. He was assassinated. So we think we won't get off our own out of this with Holland. Holland has a major, too much power. So we thought, we understand, yes, he killed all leaders. Everybody who talk about independence will disappear. That's what's happening with us in these islands all the time. So we think there is a system that was created especially to help our islands, like our small islands, who have the right to have self-governance. That is a right. It's not a discussion. You cannot vote for it. It's right inherited to us. We have the right to do that. So the discussion about independence, of autonomy is it's actually not a discussion. It's a right. So in a sense, we think we saw that there is a way. Somebody asked, how are we going to get out of this? Yes, we think there is a way. The world, the United Nations create a platform for us that cannot handle bullies like Holland and France and all those big countries to help us get out of this. Most of the countries did walk that road to get out because you don't have an army to fight them to get out. You don't have the economical power to fight them to get out. So there's a road. A road is through the decolonization process of the United Nations. That's why they was especially created. And Dr. Carmen Aram just said now that it is in the process to be extended for 10 more years. So we can make a chance to go that road, meaning in our case, Bonaire on these islands, where the power is too heavy from Holland side, we should get into the position to get the support from that entity of the United Nations in this process. That's why we from Bonaire at this moment choose to go that road, to garner try to get relisted back on the list of the United Nations. Then the United Nations will be officially part of this discussion, so our politicians don't have power to talk with Holland, to negotiate with Holland, to deal with Holland. Then we think they will have a backup, a support to can deal with Holland at the table of negotiation. At this moment, 60 years, it was not possible. So we're taking the steps already in the process to get there. So the decolonizations, we think maybe only can happen through that process. Then of the decolonization committee and all the resolutions, etc., that we all know, but those cannot be applied in a direct confrontation with Holland. I think we should have a referee on the table. We should have a brother of someone to support us in this confrontation with Holland. So that's why we choose to, because I see a lot of people ask the question, we choose to go there. And it's a way, because we saw it happened some years ago in 2013 with the French Polynesia. We think if we seek that, we will get the power back as the people to walk a just and fair self-determination and decolonization process. That's how we think. There's a lie there, there's a road there, but we have to do it as the people too. We don't let it just to the politicians do it. The politicians have an issue. They think and work on 3 years or 4 years terms, because every 3 years you have to vote for them. So they planning is 3-4 years. So this is not about 3-4 years. So we have to bypass the politicians with people like you all who are above that level. Leave the politicians, fight for the power for every 3 years, but you mobilize for a higher cost that will give you kids, our kids, or you kids, the possibility to decolonization. If we don't do that, we will always hear the talk will die, but the Holland will continue because they plan on 50 years.
Okay.
They plan on 100 years. So that's, I know it will come going on. We plan on 4 years. We cannot match them up. So we have to change our strategy with Holland, and that we have to do it not by ourselves. We think we're leaders. No, we have to get the international community involved. The only way Holland listened through history is was they put him in the spot and say, you have to stop this. Not the people of the colonies never could have stopped Holland.
Okay, Brother James, thank you very much. Brother Roberto Booth, you would like to make a contribution? I'll unmute you to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Yeah.
Thanks for this occasion. Sorry for my late tune-in due to other circumstances. But I would like to join into my brother in Bonaire, Mr. Finies, and also what Mr. Clyde from Putten had to say. Rhoda also, I applaud. But the strategy needs to change. We need our brothers in the Caribbean, especially for the CARICOM, and to understand the tradition and the history, political history. Mr. Ringo, I need you also to understand this. First of all, Aruba, Curacao, the strategy that is being used, and you all are using in Curacao, and I'm a born Curacaoian, okay? So I know I'm a child of 30th of May. I know what the struggle is concerned, decolonization, and so forth. But you have to understand this. In Curacao, I thought we were the most progressive country that was really championing this, but I realized that in Curacao, they're more backward in Aruba. Why? I will say this. You all are continuously making the mistake, and you also, and many of you guys that are on the independent side, trying to interpret the Constitution of the Kingdom. That's a big mistake. You will never be able to understand mass a piece of paper. Understand me? Why? Because you have to go back to the decolonization treaty that exists. You understand me? You have to go back to all those treaties long before that junk that the kingdom created and put us into this issue here. Now, a big strategy that I would like to explain that we should be using in St. Martin Rhoda, that we should force our politicians before signing any junk with the kingdom, is the issue of, remember with Mr. Miguel Poirier, they brought on the IMF? You guys remember that? You remember, Rhoda, that they brought in the World Bank to regulate the hurricane funds on us. Now, why are we sitting with the kingdom now to sign this devilish 7 years agreement with them without bringing in the Organization for the American State, without bringing in the CARICOM, without bringing in the Decolonization Committee and those sort of things of the UN to supervise? Because listen, anything to do with modification on the kingdom need to bring in bigger powers to oversee what the kingdom is doing and seeing that she does not violate the right to self-determination and the decolonization rights. So we should not, and we should pressure our officials to always bring in these higher power into any modification in the constitution or the kingdom constitution that will entrap us or put us further away from realizing those rights. So take this message here that we continue championing this for our local politicians, that they in no way can sign anything. We bring in the AOL, the Organization of American State, bring in the CARICOM, because she brings in the IMF, she brought in the what we call it, that checks our budget, the CFT, okay? For Aruba, she brought on the AFT, okay? And now she's bringing in a new junk on top of us in this constitutional setting. So guys, this is some of the mistakes that we are making. And constantly in Curacao and Aruba, they're trying to interpret the kingdom constitution. You will never win the kingdom. Now, secondly, there's many cases, okay, especially with Britain, with the Seychelles Islands and those sort of things, where the Diego Garcia base and all those things there. The International Court of Justice already ruled that all of what you see the kingdom is doing right now with the territory of the kingdom, the islands and whatever have you, with Sabre Station, Bonaire, breaking up of the Netherlands Antilles, harvesting the territories, etc., with the oil and gas intention that they do have. All this is illegal. Why? Read those documents there, you will see why it is illegal. Because if a people is not free, and the state of the Netherlands, the right of the people of the Netherlands Antilles still exist, okay? All what Shell did, we need to organize ourselves as the people of the Netherlands Antilles, not a Sabre separate, station separate, etc. We need to organize ourselves as the people of the Netherlands Antilles and take Shell to court. But we are in the process of setting up the organization, so we start this procedure from right here, St. Martin, because it's one territory, it's known. But this is what needs to happen right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you there, brother. I can imagine that Sister Arundel would like to rebuttal. I can imagine that Brother from Putten would like to rebuttal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the proceeding until 11 o'clock, extra half an hour than the previous half an hour. And so I would like to let Cindy work in a few important questions again to the panel, and then I'll come back to you all to rebuttal on certain issues. So be patient and hold on to your rebuttal and reaction. Okay, thank you. Cindy.
Yes, most of the questions really dive into solutions, like what is the step forward. I think we have a few solutions already, but if anybody else wants to comment on how do we move forward. Someone spoke about having mass mobilization outside of the political structure. So if anyone wants to answer those questions. And I would also want to add that some people may have to step out because we've been here for a while, so maybe we might want to wrap it up a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Go ahead to answer the questions.
I think we'll have to do a pass on this subject anyhow. So.
Correct.
Yeah. Anyhow, thank you, there, Cindy. I think one of the important elements we need to take out as a starting point is indeed, we can have a lot of reaction about each other in the history, but I think one of the things we need to contemplate on is how we go forward from here, how we actually educate and go forward, because we are talking about the UN, etc., etc. We must remind ourselves too that the UN is an entity existing out of the mere same colonial masters who are dominating us. So the illusion, I think, sometimes that the UN going to solve our problems, with all due respect, I think that's slightly heading toward the direction of illusion, in a sense, and that is a general remark I'm making based on my own point of view. I'm not rebuttaling that to anybody in the panel for that matter. But if you look at Zimbabwe not too long ago, with the white farmers only came into the equation when he started taking land from them. Prior to that, Africans were being killed constantly. So the Commonwealth, and we have certain colonial structures. I spoke about global capital a while ago, which are the fabric of maintaining those colonial institutional structures and systems. So we need to look at those things. So I want to go out, heading out of this ceremony today, that we can come up with some general suggestion as to how we can go forward as well. So I would like to then, if anybody would like to actually react to what I just asked, and the majority of the chat, what we are coming in, people are hungry for suggestion in relation to how we go forward. Which of you from in the panel would like to actually comment or give an illustration as to how we go forward? I know Sister Arundel mentioned education or general form already, but we need to contemplate on that, because involving our community, because I don't want to take up too much time as a moderator either, but when we speak about political power, many times we forget that our people as politicians are also in that colonial structure. It's like when Obama became president, he didn't become president because he was opposing the system, he was part of the system. So we need to understand the dynamics here, and education as to enhance and how our community as broad as possible be involved, because many times we leave everything to the politicians, and our local community people in general are not really having the insight and the education. So we cannot do it without educating our people. So who would like to rebuttal on what I just asked? Illustrated rather, sorry.
I want to start. I want to be brief, because I know I'm going to be brief. If you don't mind, I'm going to tie in everything. First of all, I want to totally, I thank Mr. Butte, but I think I hate when people make assumptions about what I think or what I believe without asking me. So to assume that those of us who are in the independence movement, we are interpreting the Dutch Constitution, etc., I think it's really far off target, because I personally, and a lot of the people that I associate with, have no regard for the Dutch Constitution, because my starting point is that colonialism is wrong, it's evil. Any construction to try to interpret, hold it, or to engage it, I do not pay attention to. So I'm saying it is wrong, and we will have to get rid of it by any means necessary. And when I say by any means necessary, what is my moving forward? Now, they asked about the politicians, and he mentioned Pouillet, etc. I'm not going to go into all that conversation. What I do know for St. Martin is that St. Martin's Parliament is right now, as we speak, busy with a process of approaching the United Nations to bring a case before the United Nations against the Dutch Kingdom. That I'm aware of. And they're very advanced in the conversation and in the process. And I full-heartedly support the effort to resist. However, as I've said to my people in Parliament, I know that a colonizer is not going to change his stripe just because you show up knocking at the door. And so I don't sit and wait for that to be the discussion while those efforts are ongoing. We in St. Martin, this is in terms of solution moving forward. We in St. Martin, I particularly, and people involved in the independence movement, will continue to push for independence for St. Martin until we become totally politically independent. And one of the first steps in that process in terms of solution, we're asking for a referendum. We're asking for a referendum. I am proposing December 2020. I'm proposing that we sign on to the next decade, but I'm also saying that will give us an opportunity to educate the masses in terms of information, about independence, information on the facts and the figures and the realities. Because I do believe, as you said, Brother Cuvalay, that our people need to be better informed in terms, I know you like the word educated. Again, educated, yes, not necessarily schooled, but yes, that we need to get that information out there. And I think it will give us a good 2 years to get involved in a very, data-driven campaign, and then bring it before the people. Because if anybody who really truly loves democracy, bring the question before the people of St. Martin and say, what do you want? But inform them, arm them, give them what they need so that they can make a decision. Once that decision is made, and it is made for independence, whenever that decision is made for independence, we will sit with our brothers and sisters in the region, in the kingdom, in the wherever else, even people who are not necessarily at this moment affiliated to us, to work out how St. Martin will transition as a new nation in the world of nations, but in a very responsible way. How are we going to do it so that our people, are able to do it with dignity, with pride, but also are able to survive and do it in the right way? We have all the tools. We know we have all the tools. We've been here over 400 years. So we have the staying power and the stamina. The question is how to do it responsibly moving forward. And I think once a decision is made for independence, we will sit down and chart the exact course in terms of how many years, what are the other things that need to be checked off on the list, and make sure on this day, St. Martin can declare itself the latest nation, the latest sovereign state at the United Nations.
Okay, Dr. Arundel, thank you for that contribution. Okay, Brother from Putten, you can have some minutes as well to do your rebuttal, and if you have any further comment on how we need to go forward, I would like you to express them at the same time, and go right ahead. I will make what I have to say in my closing.
Thank you, moderator. I just want to make a few comments quickly. The good doctor talked about if we were independent, then how come the Dutch would be in station? Clyde van Putten didn't say that. Again, I'm saying in 1952-53, when the charter was signed, the Dutch government told the international community, and I think it was Ringo, sorry, who alluded to Indonesia, not Indonesia, sorry, to India and the other country, I don't remember the name, that they had their doubts, and they asked that, you leave the door on ajar in the event that so many decades, one or more island wanted to come back. And that is what we are doing at this point. Again, I'm saying that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It is clear. If Statia had the so-called country status, as is the case in St. Martin, we would have acted. It takes just 2/3 of the parliament of whether Curacao, St. Martin, or Aruba to say that they want to leave, and we believe we don't need to have a referendum for that. The parliament represents the people directly. And again, I'm saying that if the political will is there on the part of the parliament to make that stand and say that we want to become independent, if that is not the case, or let's better say, to ensure that Holland comply with a completely decolonization process, then that is exactly what will happen. That needs to happen. And again, I'm saying that Statia, yes, they removed the government in Statia, but as far as I'm concerned, Holland is also have their knee in the neck of St. Martin, Curacao, and Aruba, because they have a different status to us, where they are supposed to be equal. And look the way that they're handling Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin. Brother Butte, I have lost personally any confidence in the UN, CARICOM, the OAS. Look what just happened in Guyana. There was election in Guyana. It was clear the election was rigged. Again, Holland have their hidden agenda, because Dr. Arundel also spoke about independent. Venezuela is a sovereign country. Venezuela is a sovereign country. And the United States, Holland, and other countries who is supporting the United States is infringing on the sovereignty of Venezuela. So when it comes around those countries who you said that we need to get them involved, they are not going to get involved. To me, it is a club where those guys that have the money, when it is convenient to them, they come in the support, and when it is not convenient to them, they don't support, because again, I'm saying the evidence was very, very clear with what took place in Guyana. And the Dutch, sorry, not the Dutch, the United States, the CARICOM, the OS, all of them push and push until they got the government of their choice in Guyana. And Guyana is a sovereign country. It's a cooperative republic. So what more we want than that? But again, I'm saying it is the political will. We talk a lot about the statute, and I know they're in Curacao. For a lot of people in Curacao, the statute is very sacred. Dr. De Costa Gomez worked on it back then and so forth. But again, I'm saying, for us, it was also sacred at some point in time. But when we were more educated, we realized, and I think Butte alluded to that if we take into consideration all of the different articles of the UN and the other action that took place in international jurisprudence, we would recognize that even that 1954 statute that came as a result of what happened with Indonesia with the sacrificial lamb, and as a result of all the developments there, the 1954 statute came, but even then it was illegal. But again, I'm saying it comes back to leadership. The people have to press their leaders and demand what they want. And if the leaders cannot comply with what the people want, then you have to remove them. But again, I'm saying we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It takes 2/3 of the parliament to act, and if 2/3 of the parliament act, whether it's Curacao or Rubas and Martin wants the full measure of self-government, then that will be the reality.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Van Putten.
There's another question. Sorry.
Hold on a minute. Who's speaking?
Cindy.
Cindy, hold on a minute. I got a notification here, so maybe the panel can clarify somebody. Then you can continue. There's a question that keeps coming up on Shell, and what is the issue with Shell? Some in the audience want to know. Could somebody give some clarity why Shell keeps coming up in this dialogue? Who will be able to do that? You, brother.
Mr. Kane, I think is who mentioned it in the beginning.
I beg your pardon, Cindy?
Mr. Kane, I think is who mentioned it in his introduction.
Okay, Brother Kane, could you elaborate on that then? You're unmuted.
I think it had to do with consciousness and self-belief and sense of being. Shell has nothing to do with that. Well, so I didn't mention Shell, but then if I could put 2 pennies on Shell, I guess people want to know about what happened when Shell exploited the resources in Curacao. Well, it wasn't Curacao's resources, but Venezuela's resources with the refinery in Curacao, and left around 1985, and well, a gift to the government for one guilder, and left the government of Curacao to clean up the mess that they left behind, and which was never cleaned up, and is still there. Environment and all that, which is still there, and which the people of Curacao still want to be cleaned up, and want either Shell or the Dutch government, or the Dutch and English government, because Shell is not really a Dutch company, it's a multinational. It's actually our own government multinationals, but the British and the Dutch are actually the owners of Shell. So the people of Curacao are still waiting for Shell to do some sort of cleaning up down there. That's as far as I can say, but then I did not mention Shell.
Okay, good. Thank you, brother Atwell. Cindy, you wanted to pose a question or something?
It was a Shell question, but I think it's where Ringo wants to respond. I believe probably then it was him who answered it. So please unmute his mic.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, go ahead, brother Harrigan. Could you respond to that?
Yes. One thing I want to add what Brother King said. It's not only the damage about the refinery. The thing is that since the entry of Shell in Curacao, Shell was participating in the government. All the time they were in, and they were one of the powers in Curacao. So that is one part of the history that we have to go back and research that, and put Shell also responsible for the atrocity during that time too.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Another thing I have to mention is that those who think that the Netherlands is big, they are powerful, you're putting obstacle for yourself, my brother, my sisters. I don't see that the Netherlands is big and powerful. We need to go back and study the Dutch people and the Netherlands. When you study them, and then you know how to act against these atrocities of the Netherlands. Yeah? Part of the thing is that you need to be part of the coalition to participate in the development of the future of the Caribbean islands. Because the government can take some action in these matters. Because when each island has the government who can unite and bring these matters forward against the Netherlands for the atrocities, and also not asking, demanding the independence of the island, things gonna work. Because right now we have some politicians with guava jelly lips that things doesn't work, you know? I mean, we need real politicians to do things. And we have people, and these politicians who they participate 40, 30, 25 years doing the same thing. Guys, just take your passion and let us do the work.
Okay, brother.
I have one more
Harrigan,
question.
Thank you there. Cindy, you were speaking?
Yes, I had one more question.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna do looking at the time. You're gonna bring in your question, and then I'm gonna propose that the panel members, there's 6 of them, make their final conclusion after you. No, sorry, I'm framing it wrong. I will bring in Brother Booth for his question or remarks. Then I will go around and I'll have the panel members make their final remark or conclusion in a minute time. Each of them will have 1 minute to do so. Okay, Sydney, go ahead with the question.
So a participant asked, in this time of COVID-19, you know, why are we, I guess, ruffling feathers or, you know, pushing against the Netherlands when we are in a vulnerable state?
Who would like to answer, react to that question?
Again? Sorry, say again?
So in this time of COVID-19, why are we rebelling, or why are we bringing these issues to light, is what one person asked.
Okay, let me ask the part of Curacao here.
Brother Ringo. Hello. Brother Ringo.
Okay.
You have 1 minute. You have 1 minute to make your remark. Okay.
Okay.
I gotta be very tight on the time, right?
Okay. The Netherlands, they put a sanction on Curacao saying that they cannot take a loan from nobody, not in Curacao, not in other foreign countries, only in the Netherlands. That is the problem that the government has. In their eyes, if the Netherlands is violating the rights of Curacao, the government of Curacao can put the Netherlands aside and go by the local bank, APNA, and other banks and take a loan to do the things that they have to do in Curacao. Yes? So it is the government, the situation in Curacao, the most of the money they're talking about that we need to invest in Curacao, it is for the Dutch people with their company. It is not for the local people. The bigger percent of the money goes to those companies, not to the local. So the thing is, many of these companies own the government a lot of money, tax money. Go take the money from them. We don't need no money from the Netherlands, okay? That's my thing.
Okay, brother Harrigan. Okay, good. What I will do now is, brother Booth, could you make your comment in a minute time, please? Are you still there? Hello. Okay.
Mr. Kenneth,
yes.
Can we also add Dr. Vereen Shepherd to the list of making closing remarks before while we end? She's in the she joined us.
Dr. Shepherd?
Yes, Dr. Vereen Shepherd, yeah. So while everyone is making their closing remarks, allow our time to speak.
Okay, good. Then she will actually have the same, I'll give her a little more leverage than the other panel members, seeing that she was the last person who need to talk. So I will go to Brother Booth right now. You have 1 minute to make your comment, and strictly 1 minute. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, thanks once more for this for this occasion. First of all, I want to run quickly through what was said. I wasn't through the whole conference because I was in another meeting, but my sister Rhoda, I never said St. Martin interprets the Constitution that way. I only said Aruba and Curacao for being the biggest islands, and which we used to look up to, you know, when it comes to the things in the Netherlands Antilles. Secondly, what we need in the Kingdom of the Netherlands is a strategy, and I mean for the rest of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the islands of the Netherlands Antilles, best said, it's a strategy how we're going to move forward. Mr. Clyde, I listened about the issue about Guyana, etc. But we need to be strategists. We need to know when to use entities and when to drop them over the hill. And at a given moment, sometimes you need to use some of these countries to get where you want, and you need to also push them over the cliff. What has never happened in the Netherlands Antilles, except for the boldness of Statia, is taking the kingdom to task. We only got certain rights fulfilled in the Netherlands Antilles with the prisoners, and that has opened our eyes to what many other rights that exist that the kingdom cannot get away from. However, what is the strategy we're going to use as islands to push the kingdom in assuming its true responsibility? Mr. Ringo mentioned about offshore and all those sort of things, which is true. If I have to go into how our right to self-determination and right to development has been cut by the Kingdom of Government, which I gave a presentation in 2014 to the Parliament of St. Martin, it will take long to show how the Netherlands capped us at the IDB, capped us internationally, capped our offshore, etc., etc. What is the strategy we're going to use?
You have 60 seconds, brother.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, listen. I'm a former military, and I know I serve in the Dutch Kingdom Army. I know how to push back, and we have to assume strategies how to push back. We cannot, they have more history than us in terms of writing. Mr. Finies, I need you to understand. But we have not pushed back the Dutch in terms of a physical campaign such as, give you a good example, Vietnam, where they mobilize the people and start a resistance locally, where the Dutch will see on every territory that the people are against your abuse and we are pushing back. We haven't done that. We are writing letters and trying to get the Dutch to understand based on writing. We will never win. And I'm not calling for nothing about violence, none of those things. But what I'm saying, when they experience a resistance, when they see that the people on the island are documenting and writing and putting posters around the country to stop colonization. When they see the Dutch doesn't want that, they don't want the embarrassment. And we have not reached.
Point taken, brother.
We have not reached to that point yet. As islands in the Netherlands, that we are writing too much and speaking a little too often.
Okay, thank you very much. Action. Okay, thank you. Okay. Cindy, I'm not seeing Dr. Shepherd. Could you bring her in?
Well, she's here. It's on the Vereen.
Okay, go.
But I think she may need to leave.
On the who?
Vereen.
Okay, bring her in, please. Just unmute her and let us.
Yeah, I can't unmute.
Maureen, you said she's on the?
Vereen, yes.
Go to the end of the list.
Okay.
It's okay. I guess we can just go ahead and at the end.
She doesn't show up, Cindy, on the list.
No. Okay.
No. Okay. Good. I will give the panel members their minute to make their closing remarks and advice. Dr. Corbin, would you like to start, please?
Well, Vereen has appeared. Perhaps I would defer.
She has appeared?
Yes, she's here.
Okay, and on?
She's unmuted, yes.
Okay, good. Dr. Shepherd, good evening, welcome. Are you hearing us?
What name is?
Her name is what?
What name is she on the stage? I don't see
Vereen. Vereen, I can see her.
The microphone. It seems to me that she does not have a microphone.
Yeah, it's on, but it's not muted.
But I'm not seeing her in the list either.
I can see her though.
She's there, it seems, but she has no microphone.
It's okay. I guess in the meantime, we can have everyone else speak. She said she's speaking. We can't hear you, doctor. Let me tell her in the messaging. She said she's speaking. But we can't hear her.
Let Dr. Corbin make his final remarks, and I'll look and see what I can do for Dr. Shepherd to come in, okay?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, it's very brief. I think that we are fairly clear on the issue and the problem. We have to agree that there may be multiple solutions to this, but we have to work very closely together in order to ensure that we bring the region along with us. It's very important to note your experience in St. Kitts, your family ties in St. Kitts Station has very strong Kittitian ties, as does St. Croix. And the issue here, I think, is that we have to recognize that St. Kitts and Nevis is the last country in the Caribbean to become independent. That was 1983. Since that time, there's not been much activity, and the people who are now in power in the CARICOM countries in general and all over the region are adults now. They were not born into independence. They were born into independence. They were not born into colonialism. So colonialism, in many ways, is seen as in the past tense. And I think the reference was made earlier of the term post-colonial Caribbean, which I always cringe when I hear that. And I think Dr. Arundel also cringes as well. The issue of how we're addressing this, I believe, will be in our favor if we are able to convince our region that, in fact, the issue is not ended, and also that it is in the wider Caribbean integration interest for the issue to be resolved once and for all. And we certainly need the support of the international community in the United Nations, in the hemispheric institutions, COPAL, among others, that have made very clear their positions on this. So just to make that point, that we need to continue onward, but the communication as well as our links that we're making today and beyond will be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Corbin. Brother Ringo, you have a minute to make a closing remark, please.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for the participation today. And thank you to Brother Kenneth and Cindy for the work. for us is unite, work together, that we can solve this matter with the Netherlands. And like Brother Boot said, we have to stand up. We have to stand up and face the Netherlands, because Netherlands never they feel the pressure from the Caribbean, and that we have to do right now. And we have to plan everything. We have to do our research. We have to mobilize our people to participate. We have to educate and re-educate our people, that we can move forward in the Caribbean to solve all these things. I want to give Brother Booth my phone number, 541-2373, and that we can keep contact on different matters, because I did work also as a military in the Netherlands, so we can do some things together. And I have to say that for the government themselves, don't sign the Caribbean reform identity entitling that the government of Netherlands, they passed them, and just take action. There are many other options that they can do, that they can solve this matter. Yes? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that contribution. Brother James, could you please make your final comment?
You need to unmute him.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Hold on. Hold on, James. I'm unmuting you for some reason. It's not working.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you all for this tremendous afternoon. And it was very good move for us all, that in this situation, to have these discussions going on. Okay, my last word is that we're on the road, and this road, it shouldn't be an issue of us only on these Dutch islands. We're doing from our part the best we can, and some do more, some do less, but it should become a Caribbean issue. We in the Caribbean should say that we don't want any colonialism more in the Caribbean. So the Caribbean is moving towards integration. You can integrate the Caribbean with colonies inside it. So it has to be, we feel that the Caribbean has to support us in that bigger port, that it has to become a Caribbean and international campaign to decolonize the Caribbean. And then we make a chance against Holland. Then we make a chance to change something in this region. So that is my final words, that we, the Caribbean, should see each other as sisters and brothers that have the same rights to be equal and free. Nothing else. We only want our equality and our freedom. We don't want more.
Okay, thank you there, brother. Mr. Van Putten, could you make your final remarks, please? Where are you?
Please, yeah, he needs to be unmuted.
I'm not seeing him. Brother Van Putten, okay, yeah, go ahead. Hold on, it's coming up. Hold on. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I want to thank the organizers for the initiative taken. I hope that as a result.
You have background noise, I think, Mr. Van Putten, in your area.
Yes, what I want to say, I want to thank the organizers for the initiative taken and for inviting me. I would hope that as a result of this discussion this afternoon, that there would be a sort of conclusion list drawn with the different points that came forward. And then I assume that from here we will, discuss the next step. I don't want to be the pessimist, but again, I'm a realist. And I heard James talk a lot about the need for Caribbean brothers and sisters to help. I think Dr. Carlyle also spoke about St. Kitts and Nevis being the last Caribbean entity to obtain its full independence. But I think it comes back to economics. They are not interested in us. We have reached out to every island in the sub-region when we were decapitated. And when you did get any response from them, they told you very clearly they consider it an internal matter, between the Dutch and their territories. And I believe that what needs to happen is that there need to be more unity. I think what we have a lot is a lot of arrogance among the islands. If Curacao feel that they're bigger than Statia, or Statia feel that they're bigger than Sabre, it depends on your size and your economy of scale. So maybe a politician coming from a smaller island, no politician and no government in Curacao, Aruba may see it relevant to take an advice. I have been calling for the coming together of the islands of the former Netherlands Antilles, where we can work out a common approach as to how we will address Holland. And again, I am not talking based on emotion. I go back to the United Nations Charter of 52-53, where Holland told the international community to sign, and they indicated back then that Holland, together with Suriname at the time, at the sixth island, that we were in an independent federation. And I think that our best bet as islands is to force Holland to complete the decolonization process. Even recently, Andre Bosman of the ruling VVD party, he submitted an initiative law. It went to the Advisory Council in Holland, which is the highest advisory body. And I think that we need to unite and force them to complete the decolonization process. Like I said before, there's no need to reinvent the wheel about referendum and all the things that comes with it. We need to force them to complete. And that's why my government was thrown out, because we dare to have stood up to Holland. We said to Holland, what you're doing is wrong. We took them to court. We took them to task, and we moved by force. That did not stop us. We continue to fight. We have cases right now still against them in court. But again, I'm saying if the bigger island, because it should be noted here, what St. Martin is doing at this point in time is exactly what Statia did. And we call on St. Martin, we call on Curacao, we call on Aruba to join us in the process. Join us in the process. And it's only now because they find themselves in the cabal at this point in time that they are actually with their hands up in the air. We need to come together. We need unity is strength. And if we don't come together, Holland will continue to use the divide and rule tactic, the divide and conquer tactic, so that they will be able to continue the dominance. Okay, I don't trust, 1 minute, Kenneth, let me finalize. I don't trust the international bodies. CARICOM, it's about economics. All of these islands is looking for where they can get help. And Holland is well known for walking around with its financial pocketbook and trying to gain dominance and influence in the region. And that is what they have been doing, especially in the aftermath of COVID, the COVID pandemic. All the economies have been challenged in the sub-region, and wherever Holland feels that they can penetrate and be of influence based on their economic and financial wealth, that is what they do. So I don't expect we have to do it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Brother Van Putten, for your contribution. Thank you. Brother Atwell. And after you, I'll then bring in Sister Vern to contribute to the final stage of this proceeding. Okay?
And I didn't get to make my closing remarks, so don't forget me.
Okay, well, that's good. We need to look over each other, you know. Thank you for that, Roland. Okay, go ahead, Brother Adwell. Maybe I should do it in the old-fashioned way. Let me give the lady the first preference. Like my mother taught me. Yeah, my mother taught me and brought me up that way. So you go ahead, Sister Arundel.
Okay, this will be brief.
1 minute as well. I'm pushing
Okay.
here. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'm trying to be brief. Okay, thank you again. I'll wrap up saying thanks to you and your team for the opportunity. I want to just briefly, in closing, say to all of us here, I totally support the call for unity and for working together. As I've said, we have pledged to support everyone in this struggle in whatever their approach is. However, and I stress and I emphasize, I, in particular, and those of us in the independence movement, do not believe in a relationship with the Kingdom of the Netherlands other than as it would be with any other sovereign state. We do not want to be a part of it. We do not want to be included in any conversation on how to move forward within the kingdom. We want to be a sovereign state like all others, and we want to be the last, not St. Kitts and Nevis in the region until the others choose so. So, in having said that, we will support whoever moving forward in whatever struggles that they have. What the question that was asked that was not answered was why do we now choose to push the Dutch during this time in terms of pandemic and whatever? And I'm saying there is never a time to call for independence as the right time. It is the right thing to do. And so we are going to insist on a referendum because we think the people need to be heard, whether the parliament chooses to use their mandate without calling for a referendum. It's up to the parliament, but we think the people need to be heard. The people need to have a say in moving forward. We went to them in 1994, we went to them in 2000, and they spoke and they chose. This current status is not working in the interest of St. Martin and its people, and we're saying the people should have a voice in moving forward. And we say the first stage would be the referendum within the next 2 years. Yes. Okay. On that note, again, thanks for the opportunity for being here. And yes, and I wish us all well.
Okay, thank you, Sister Arundel, for that closing remark. Brother Hartwell, could you make your final contribution in a minute time? Then I let the Sister Shepherd in.
2 points. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation. I see this as a very invigorating conversation to move forward into our future with new ideas, new constructions. The second thing I'd like to address is the fact that someone behind Galaxy S9, he asked the question directly to me, having to do with Aruba wanted to stay in colonization structure or colonization situation. That might have been said, but the thing is, it seems to me, and it's a very critical remark, that when Betico Cruz died, the independence movement of Aruba died with it. Because in 1990, at the Roundtable Conference in The Hague, Aruba got the referral that independence, which should have happened in 1996, was indefinitely suspended. So no one in Aruba is speaking about independence. And as far as I see and far as I know, there isn't a conversation in Aruba at this moment about independence. That is what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Brother Aswell. Sister Shepherd, I think you should be on.
So I would add on behalf of Dr. Shepherd, because she's having technical difficulties with her mic, and she wanted to mention that we should get our issues to Dr. Armand Zunder, because he's the representation of our region on the CARICOM Reparations Committee. So she was encouraging us to get our information to him. And as she is a member, she's also a member of the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination on CERD. So we need to get our issues to the committee. So she's asking that we do that. And she apologizes for not being able to join us verbally.
Okay, Cindy, as you've been carrying us through this storm for today in this special, exceptional moment of the proceeding, as co-host, I think it was a whole big task for all of us, including the audience, including the panel members. Would you like to make a few closing remarks, Sister Cindy, before I make mine and wrap up things here?
Yes, I would like to end and thank everyone for joining. It was very long, but because it's I would say a more newer issue to bring to the greater region, I think it needed the time that we took, and I hope that everyone was able to get their questions answered and to be more open to us collaborating on a unified front, because one Caribbean nation being in bondage, I think it's a reflection of all of our duties to make sure that we're all free. So I do hope that we can continue this conversation, continue our network, and help the greater good, that we can be free peoples of the Caribbean. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Sister Cindy. I would like to make my closing remarks and say it was a good initiative. It was educational, it was fruitful, constructive, all of those ingredients. I think we mentioned it earlier, and I started with that remark as well. Without the community at large, and I think along the centuries or years, we've been struggling against and fighting against colonialism. In many instances, we, the leaders and some of the social activists who are there entangling with the politicians mostly, um, fail to nationally transcend. What I mean by nationally transcend, a people in a broader sense, the community, the people in our communities, whether they're the garbage collector, what it may call, we need everybody on board to win the struggle. And unless we educate our people at large to call us to accountability, because we need to be called out when we are not doing the job right. And in many instances, our community at large are left out. They are not being given the necessary insight as such. They are not being allowed to have insight. And so we need to get over that and pull our community together. We, the leaders who call ourselves leaders, need to understand without our community at large, we are not going to make it. Another point I want to say too, look, there's a lot happened in the past. We need to learn from the past to go forward. Without learning from the past, we cannot go forward. I think it is not constructive at this point in time anymore. We know about our mistakes in the past. We're going to continue to make mistakes as we go forward. I think I heard Brother Van Putten and others stated that we need to unite. One of the problem among us, looking at this composition here, Pan-Africanism or African people in general, we are too divided. We need to unite and put our petty differences aside and look at the bigger long-term interests. And there's where we remain vulnerable when we cannot do that. We remain vulnerable to exploitation from others constantly. So it's imperative that we put our strength and all of our knowledge together in order to go forward as one force. And in this case, we cannot do without each other. The other neighboring islands need us. We need them. Actually, we need all of us together. And so this is what we need to work on and continue to educate our people and strengthen ourselves. We're gonna try and do a follow-up on what we did here today, and I will internally discuss it with our members on the platform in general. But I think this is a starting point of connecting with each other. So I would like to thank all of the panel members, all of the audience out there who's been participating, listening to us, and all of the brothers and sisters here who appeared in front of me in image and giving their contribution. I would like to thank you all and say at the same time, be safe and continue to build that bridge among each other as we go forward. Thank you all for this evening together as such. Very much thanks, and be safe and good night.
Thanks.
All the best. All the
Yeah,
best.
God bless. God bless.
Good
So,
night, everyone.
I beg your pardon, Cindy?
I said good night to everyone, or good afternoon,
Yeah,
evening,
yeah,
in
yeah.
our part of the world.
I'm going to close now because if I have to stay, I then probably will have the tendency to continue. But I'm in Europe, so I need to go and get some rest as well. So everybody in the Caribbean, be safe and take care. Okay. Brother Corbin, it was nice seeing you all again. You as well. That was a long time. So be safe and thank you.
Oh, it's in Netherlands. The last time we talked, it was in Netherlands.
Listen, I'm from Station. Let me put it that way. And I'm jailed without my will right now. So otherwise I would be on the rocking station. Okay. Just to be clear on that. Okay. Y'all have a good evening.
Take care.
Good night.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.